Alright, shalom everybody. Give me a second. Extremely hot outside. Trying to get set up for you all. Then it started raining, so that didn't help. Prayer, please. Let's sit together and make this work. I think so. At least. And of course, stuff that I had is always part of the deal too. Stuff that you have set up. Everybody's in the same area, so you got something set up in the place ready to go. And then when you need it, it's been moved. So, I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta find my bottle opener. I had it ready to go, and I had no clue where it is. Maybe I can find another one or find something else I can use this one. But I need some water, some cold water, because it is extremely hot. But hopefully all is well with everybody though. Yeah, this is crazy. Y'all get to see now me look crazy when I can't find something. I'm gonna need some water, like I said, or else I'm not gonna make it that far for this live session. It's hot even inside. I'm not plugged in or anything, so I'm just inside while no wind and no air is coming through. Where is I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta find this, or else we're not gonna be talking today. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we have to figure out something. Hopefully this will work. Hopefully I don't bend it. But need some water. Oh, this will work. My apologies once again. Like I said, though, it's hot, and there's no air coming through. I've got to get something to drink. How's everybody doing? Haven't even started yet. We already sweating. Oh man. It's too thick. Oh, there we go. Alrighty. So thank you all. Thank you for your patience. It's Sunday. On Sundays we go a little bit longer anyway, so I'm not trying to make an excuse for my tardiness, just saying. I'll make sure that we get what we're supposed to get out of the day. And okay, let's see. Open. And then we get two open, and then we shall start. How's everybody doing? Thank you to those who are coming over for ministerial prayer, by the way, too. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you kindly. My greatness. Hopefully everybody was doing well. I actually legit, I'm not even joking with this. I meant to reach out to all the New Yorkers out there and be like, yo, y'all be careful, because if the Knicks win that championship, it's gonna go crazy. And from what I saw, I only saw the bits and pieces, but I saw cars on fire, cars flipped over, poles burnt down, signs ripped down and jumped on. You know, that's how it be when any of these teams win these championships. But I didn't realize it because I forgot that they were playing. So it was like 11 something when I realized, oh snap, the game's playing, and it's possibly the last game. And then I saw when I looked up real quick, Googled NBA Finals. It said that the Knicks were up by, I think it was up by 2 at that moment, and they won by 4. So prayerfully, all of y'all are safe. Congratulations if you're a New York Knicks fan. I'm done being fanatics of teams, but I get it though because I grew up in New York. Well, you know, through first grade, I lived in New York and have been back a few times. Have family ties there and stuff. Got soul ties even that I got to be careful about sometimes from there. But congratulations and everything. But you know, when teams win championships, when those gladiators win, back in the day, I think it used to be the red versus the blue, or the pink versus the blue, or the red versus the purple, or whatever. But basically now, you know, everybody's got their own gladiator arenas, coliseums and stuff. And when teams win, or when teams lose, you know, it could be a little bit of craziness going on. So hopefully you guys are safe. I know the parade's probably going to be, I don't know when the parade will be. I guess the parade will be probably tomorrow or the day after. So everybody up there, hopefully you guys are safe and doing well. I meant to, like I said, I was thinking about it. You had asked Elder Alma, it was 11 something. And I was like, should I text everybody? Should I not? Should I? I was like, nah, I don't want nobody texting me at 11 something. You know, over a sports game, especially if they don't follow it. But it wasn't for the sports part. I was legit. Like, hopefully, you know, y'all are safe up there. So, prayerfully, everybody's safe. Congratulations if you're a Knicks fan, or if you kind of have been forced into supporting the Knicks because you live in the area, whatever the case might be. But hopefully, you guys had an enjoyable experience. But we're gonna go ahead and get ready to get started. Thank you for allowing me to find a place where I'm at. It's difficult to find a place to do a live session on a Sunday. So I was traveling around and still dropping off things from us getting in last night. So we're ready to go. We're locked in. Prayerfully you guys are doing well. And thank you for your patience again. We were doing well and got back in the times thing, and now it seems like we're getting off there. But y'all keep us in prayer. I think we'll be in the same place until Monday, and then on Monday we'll be back on the road consistently again. I'm still trying to work out, by the way. I'll try to have something not only for the children or the parents of the children for VBS that starts tomorrow, but also I'll try to have our stuff together for if we'll be able to do any meetups in like Louisiana. Well, really, you know, if y'all can reach out, I'll try to go through our numbers and everything, but it's a real busy season for me. I'm kind of, you know, my own secretary and everything like that, so I do my best, but we'll try to see if we can meet up in person, possibly in Mississippi, Louisiana, either on the way down there, probably not on the way down, so it'd have to be on the way back up out of Louisiana. I'm not sure how close we are to where Texas family want to try to do something. Y'all can come and we can try and meet somewhere close in that area. We actually got some SOC from other places that actually are in H-Town, but they're busy. But maybe we can try to figure out something. I'm not sure if I think we got to go back to Georgia, finish, tie some more things up, and then we'll head back up by July 11th to support Big Brother Thomas and Sister Tanya on their 30th year anniversary. So we'll try to see if we can set some stuff up, possibly on the way up there. Maybe it'll probably just have to be if y'all want to come out to a live session, either in the rising or the evening. You know, maybe we can try to set something up in Ohio, maybe like Toledo, for those that are over there. You know, but it just be for the live session. You know, if you want to come out, you know, we can make sure that, you know, you come out for the live session in the rising or the evening. You know, try to get you to the gate wherever we'll be staying. And you can feel free to chill with us, and then we'll go from there to Detroit. And so everybody, hopefully, you know, I believe the 11th is a Saturday or something like that. So we're gonna try and go. So we'll try and be there a couple days before, and then that Sunday, the day after, we're looking at possibly going to that island over there. that that you guys pay like $12 a year for, whatever that place is called again, and maybe we can go there and chill out on Sunday before we then got to start heading over to the East Coast again, because we got to be up in New York by July 18th. So, possibly maybe we can try to do a meetup or a live session type meetup again, once again on like the 17th or something like that. If everybody want to come out, maybe we can do something in Philly, and you guys can come to where I'm doing a live session, and then we might be able to do something like that. Right. So a lot of movement, and then after that, after the 18th, which is when we're gonna do the baptismal piece / everybody get together on the 18th in on Brooklyn Beach. Once we finish that, we finna go to. After we finish that, we finna go to. Take a few days off, probably 2-3 days off, and then we'll get to going again. All right, but we got a lot moving and stuff like that. But VBS is going to start tomorrow, so we're excited about that. So starting tomorrow, we'll have the extracurricular as far as or early rising Bible study session. We have Thursday rising prayer. We may or may not have the women's meeting on Friday, or move it to another day. We're looking at that right now, and the possibility of what we can do with that. And then, but Monday through Friday, we'll have our live session every rising at 8 a.m. New York time, every rising. So every day that week at 8 a.m., no days off. And then in the evenings, every evening, the children will be on Zoom at 6 p.m. The adults will be on Zoom at 7 p.m. And everybody will meet back on Zoom at 8 p.m. If that makes sense. Alrighty. Flyers have already been sent out on all the social media platforms. They'll be sent out again tonight. So you'll have all that information again. I'm not sure if I'll be able to send it out every night, but hey, you guys can feel free to repost or to share or to send the post when you see them, okay? So we're excited, we're thankful. And you can invite whoever you like, just they need to know, obviously, respect Suffer Vacation Bible School, and you probably want to make sure that if they're coming with the children, they know the specific time. For the adults, they know the specific time, and for the end, of the night, they know the specific time. And so there'll be no live sessions in the evening because we'll be doing VBS the entirety of the week. All right? Okay. I'm on. And also, too, we're still working on it. Kofi _42 on TikTok will eventually change into Amma and Kofi. And where we'll be doing some great content and stuff as a couple, and getting back into a lot of couples things and posting things, whether it be stuff for couples or even some stuff for Bloom and Flourish. Sorry, not Amma and Kofi. Sorry, Bloom and Kofi. Bloom and Kofi. For Bloom and Flourish things, but as well as for us as a couple. So if you guys been waiting on that, just it's almost done. It's almost here. We're excited about that. So I think we're ready to start. Alrighty, all praises. So I don't even know if I started off correct. Let me, just in case I didn't, I'm not sure. Let me go ahead and may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, to be prayed, praised, proclaimed, projected, protected His message. Amen. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste, osai lekitoboya, Ohio, I see you, Manut, Wakwan, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Bonson, Privet, Abarigani, Guten Tag, Akwaba, Madase, Itisen, Jambo, Bimini Kofi, and the Farako Katana the Wewe, Bokuto, greetings, grand rising, salutations, Bakwata, Barakala Chemichaba, and I ain't Kwai, Kilit and servants of Christ, Shalom, Shalom, everybody, peace. I am Pastor Kofi. Pastor Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time. I'll be the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Shan Shalom, or even Shalom, or Yam Allah Shalom. May you have peace upon you on this first day of the week. And once again, I give all honor and praise to the Most High. I give praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that is able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, and her website at Bloom and Flourish. And soon, you'll be able to check her out on TikTok on Bloom and Kofi, on our channel that we'll have together. So we're excited, we're grateful, we're thankful. Thank you for those who've been praying for us on all these travels and everything. Still a lot more travel to go. And I thank you all. We have needed every little bit of, if I just be honest, those who give in so many different ways, including the viewership, is appreciated. But those who've helped us out even financially, as far as monetary wise, as far as money, finance and money don't always mean the same thing. But literally, We've had some times where if it wasn't for you all, we don't know if we would have made it to the next destination, let alone been able to make sure that some of the things that need to be taken care of home. As you know, we're in Levitical priesthood as a family, but you know, we do need help from persons such as yourself. And so I want to say thank you. You guys have been, you know, in many ways, lifesavers. And so thank you to those who do. Thank you for those who continue to support. And I'm not trying to even pressure. I'm just saying thank you. We honor you. We honor that, and we pray that y'all get back to you 100-fold. And if it be His will, then some. Right, that 36 and 100-fold. But yeah, so we're gonna get ready to get into continuing our series of Exodus. I believe it's Exodus chapter 7 we're in, but we're not really going to read Exodus chapter 7. We're going to focus in on a couple things out of it. I believe yesterday we did Exodus chapter 7 and focus on verse 1. So I'm going to focus on a couple things throughout the rest of it. We're not going to really read through it. Once again, though, feel free to read through. We've been doing the series for a while, by the way, as well, so you can always go back to check out the recordings of things and see where everything lies. But yeah, so we're looking at Exodus chapter 7, and we're going to focus in on a particular theme. If you're able to rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, or however you were able to reverence the word, we ask that you do so at your, you know, as you are able. However you were able to do so, we thank you in advance for doing so. And once again, thank you for your support. Thank you for the likes, shares, subscriptions, and the notification tabs, the reposts, the hypes, all the different things that you can do to let the algorithm know that you like what you get. Amen. We thank you for all those different things that you might be doing. And of course, feel free to share it with somebody who needs to hear the word, somebody who needs to know the message. We're thankful and grateful for an opportunity to rock with y'all one more game. Give me 1 second. I need to double check, make sure y'all are charging. All praises to the Most High. Can everybody, mic check 1, 2, mic check testing 1, 2. Can everybody see and hear me okay? Yes, no, maybe so. Mic check testing 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Can everybody see and hear me all right? 1, 2. All right. About to charge you up. Well, I'm about to give you a message. Prayerfully, it charges you up. But whether it charges you up, makes you happy, or does whatever it needs to, hopefully it increases you in what it is that you need to see. All right. All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate you. Loud and clear. All righty. So, all right. We did the announcements already. Once again, VBS coming up. Let's be ready for it. We will try to record it, all audio recordings, possibly some visual recordings, and but we'll be ready to go. All praises to the Most High. All right. Okay. So, we'll say shalom to everybody once again. We're getting ready to say our Bible pledge while we're getting ready to do that. Let's go ahead and say shalom. Shalom. How's everybody doing? How you doing, Elder Anais? And thank you, ministerial staff, for joining us for prayer. Earlier this rising. How you doing, Elder Anais, Sister Beck, Brother Keith, Sister Allison, Brother Dwayne, Brother Alton, Patrick. Yes, Yahashua, the Messiah loves me. How you doing? How you doing, Sister Danielle? By the way, too, I keep saying I'm going to do so. Those who are making phone calls and stuff, we're going to start having some meetings just with us, too. Just to let you guys know. All right, how you doing, Sister Beck? Donna Lisa, John Jones, Sister Deborah, Sister Greta, Holy Spirit filled, Big Brother Thomas. If Sister Tanya is around, let her know we said shalom. How you doing, Living Word? How you doing, Sister Shirley? How you doing, Team Me? Quinn, Daria Vesh, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. How you doing, Mazem? M-A-Z-M-8-D. Oh, Maz. Yeah, I'm not sure. Mazmead. Not sure how to pronounce it. Please forgive me. How you doing, DK? Thank y'all for the repost. I see you, Team 97. I see you. Hey, babe, how you doing? My wife is on the Honorable Alma. As always, check her out on TikTok, YouTube, and the website at Bloom and Flourish. Love you, babe. Thanks for being on. How you doing, AD? The female Barbara. Hank Snow, thanks for being part of the community. Just like that. Minister Steven, Sister Jennifer. Let's see. I think I said Quinn already. Sister Jennifer, did I say so already? Not sure. Sister Beth, Tony, Clinton, Wild, Rodney, James, Nancy, Beryl, Brenda, Brother Jacob, Elva, Mommy, Brother Ali. What's up, my guy? Monster Queen, Juju, KCK's mom. I'm not sure what that stands for, so please forgive me. Don't want to say a wrong name or anything like that and come off offensive. But yeah, prayerfully, everybody's doing well. Um, it's interesting. I don't know. Prayerfully, y'all keep us in prayer. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this and not lose signal. These devices are already trying to overheat. Hold on 1 second. You guys can't see there's a door behind you. I have it open for air, but the sun is shining through it. So I guess I'm gonna, y'all forgive me for this. I'm probably gonna be sweating. It is what it is. Alrighty. But hopefully that'll make things at least a little bit cooler on the devices. And once the sun gets high enough, then I can open that back up. Alrighty. Everybody see and hear me okay? Yes, no, maybe so? We're gonna get ready to say our Bible pledge and jump right in. Everybody see and hear me okay? Yes, no, maybe so? I think we already did that, right? Mic check? Okay. All right. How you doing, Yasway? How you doing, Lady Trucker? Let's go ahead and get ready to get started. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Appreciate it. All right. We'll say our Bible pledge and we'll jump right in. You can put your Bible or your right-handed device in the air. Just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yechava. Aman. Yechava Sham. His name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated or go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High Yah. How you doing, Michael? And thank y'all for the love. Alrighty. So today we're going to be focusing in Exodus chapter 7, I believe. We've been doing this Exodus series for a while. Today our focus is whether Moses or Aaron, semicolon, represent. How you doing, Brother Dwayne? Thank you. Once again, whether Moses or Aaron represent. Right? So whether Moses or Aaron, semicolon, that means whatever's on one side of the semicolon or the other. So whether you be Moses or Aaron, represent. All right. Now, this comes off of yesterday's message for those that were with us yesterday, where we went through the fact of there's a couple verses throughout the Bible that will say, do you not know that ye are gods? Or what we read yesterday said along the lines of, to Moses, Yahweh said, I will make you like a God. That's what it says in English. Or I will make you like Elohim, or I have made you like Elohim, and I have made Aaron to be your prophet. And a lot of persons misread this because that's not what it said in its origin. Hey, how you doing? Isabella? Thanks for being on. Right? So that's not what it said in its origin. It did not say, I have made you to be a god before Pharaoh, and I've made Aaron to be your prophet. We went over that word, right? That word made is actually the word Natan, Navatan, or what Pearsons would say today, Nathan. If you've heard the name Nathan. Nathan doesn't mean to be made. We went through a whole bunch of different things to talk about, but basically they talked about to constitute. And yesterday's message that was given to us via Holy Spirit was, hey, your leadership is constitutional. How you doing, Sister Mignon? So what Yahweh said to Moses was, I will due to the Constitution, due to the covenant, and everything that you follow in the Constitution that I write out, that I speak to you, that I say is my word, as long as you do what is constitutional, right, I will put you in a position to where you can look Pharaoh eye to eye, because he's going back to Kemet. And in Kemet, as much as we think everybody in Kemet would have been saying, hey, what peace queen and peace king, as if they even use those terms, right? Pharaoh is the head slave owner in the same manner that, not exactly the same, but in the same manner as the emperors of Rome were. Emperare means head slave owner. So anybody that's not Pharaoh is a slave to Pharaoh. That's the way that works. We have, because of of Romans changing a lot of the dynamics of it and us seeking for any kind of history to attach ourselves to. What's happened over time is anything that is deemed to be African, which obviously the original Kemetic persons are African by the Africanist terms and stuff, or Alkebalan, or Cushitic, Ethiop, etc. But these persons who were in Kemet, we have this mindset that everybody walked around and everybody was treating everybody with respect. And no, like Pharaoh had several different harems, and harem is a term being used nicely, because when you guys hear the term harem, you guys have some weird, romanticized, fetishized, pornographic even thought process of stuff, and you'll even see pictures and paintings and places of harems, and there's some guy in the background who's supposed to be a ruler and his head hangs low when there's all these women having so much fun in front of him and stuff like that. And the reality is these were slaves, and they were treated like less than human beings. And by the way, they were not just female harems, they were male harems. They bred harems, so pharaohs that were coming up, or pharaohs that lived long enough, were messing with some of the persons that were the babies that they had gotten their women pregnant with. We had this weird fetishized, romanticized thought process about this culture, and it's not really everything that. I'm not saying they didn't do great things. I'm not saying the pyramids weren't built. I'm not saying that they couldn't see what was going on with pregnancy. I'm not saying, but what I'm saying is there's certain things that we're just automatically assuming that, like those confessions of Ma'at, the 42 confessions, or some of you call it the 42 negative confessions of Ma'at. We make this decision that everything was was Gucci, but it wasn't. It was a lot of foolishness going on, and Pharaoh was not to be looked in the eye by almost anybody that existed on the planet. As far as he was concerned, as far as their belief was concerned, they believed him to be a Neter worthy of worship. And so he was the only Neter on earth. So he was the only thing on earth that really should be worshipped. And so if somebody had an issue, right, with worshiping him, or not treating him as above them to that capacity, they were going to be taken out. So Moses had to be given signs and wonders, so that when he came before Pharaoh, right, he would be able to look at him eye to eye, and he had to therefore be constitutionally, right, righteous with Yah, so that the one who was above Pharaoh could make it to where when Moses showed up, he was a representative of Elohim. So he said, so Yah never said in the original format, in the original language, he never said, I made you to be me on earth, and therefore I made Aaron your prophet. He said, no, I made you, or he didn't say made. He said, I constituted. He said, I agree. He said, I released authority. He said, I've given you some of my power. If you remember, it even said some things like, I've leased. I've allowed you to be able to represent myself, and I've given you Aaron as if he's a prophet, right, to be a prophet next to you. In other words, that word prophet to be your mouthpiece. Since you cannot speak that well, it's not that you will not speak, but whatever you speak, he will speak it for you clearly to make sure everybody gets it. Just like with the Most High Yah, he will speak something, right, to us, and we are supposed to speak it clearly that others might receive. How you doing, Noel? Right? So these are things that we have to know. How you doing, Sakim? How you doing, Legacy in Motion, King Baby? So we have to, Fox 4, thanks for being part of Community World Boss, Gordo, right, is it? So we have to receive this stuff properly, and we are not taught these things properly. We're not taught properly through culture, through etymology, all these things. So how do we escape modern Kemet if we don't realize that in the same fashion, Yah is saying that he's making some of us Moses, he's making some of us Aaron, but regardless of how he makes it, we're supposed to represent. And we're going to, the Bible tells us that our gifts shall bring us before great men. Is that in your word? I promise you it is, if you never read that. The Bible tells you, it declares to you, that your gift, what Yah has given you to be able to use, right, and execute it, shall bring us before great men. And if you recall, Moses is brought before Pharaoh, but Moses is told before he gets to Pharaoh, and so were the persons who were elders with him, even though the elders, and especially those who were officials, they left him hanging, right? But Moses was told, hey, Pharaoh is going to say no. How you doing, double OG, triple OG? Right? Well, I don't know what happened. I think Noel was okay. It wasn't Noel's. Noel's pretty straight. I don't know if he said something crazy, but I don't think he did, or he probably didn't mean it that way. But He says, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh. You're going to tell Pharaoh to let my people go worship me. And Pharaoh's going to say no, because Pharaoh believes he's the only one worthy of worship. His whole system is based upon him being worshipped. How you doing, HP? Right? His whole system is based upon him being worshipped. Just like this whole system is based upon all the different things that are there. Right? How you doing, Winston? His whole system is based off of worship. This whole system is based off of worship too, but it's not based off of worshiping the Most High. See, because a lot of people believe that. See, might I help you with something? How many of you believe, and I'm not trying to say, I'm not talking about if they follow it. I'm just saying, or let's put it like this. How many of you were taught that the United States of America is a Christian nation? How many of you were taught that? Let's just say it like that. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm not saying you can't think it's modern Babylon. Just show of hands if you don't mind, or just saying, acknowledging yes or no or whatever. How many of you were taught? How you doing, Sister Valerie? Thanks y'all for the repost. How many of you were taught that the United States of America is a Christian nation? Yes, right? Okay, right? More? All right, so a lot of persons were taught that. No, you weren't taught that at all? Okay, great. So you weren't taught wrong. But many persons are taught that. That's why many persons believe that it is a Christian nation. The reality is that it's actually a Masonic nation. Right? If you believe that you're an American, because most persons don't know what America is, right? If you know what American means by the original definition, American literally means, that you are the original, and this is a lawful definition, right, in Black's Law Dictionary, not written by a black person. The person's last name is Black, okay? In Black's Law Dictionary, there's a guy, or when he wrote it, and this is what lawyers still use to this day. It's, if you're especially in the West, but really all over the world, is considered to be the greatest book on law that one can have, especially in the West. So when I say the West, we're talking about Eurocentric nations. What you will discover is that American, right, an American in its origin literally meant a copper-colored person indigenous to the Americas. In other words, if you consider yourself to be an American, or if you were considered to be an American, it means you have to be Native American, or have Native American in you. If you're not Native American, technically you're not an American. By law, not by my standard, by law, right? So that's law. You can look that up for yourself. A matter of fact, that Boston Tea Party that you were taught that was such a glamorous thing, that actually was literally them taking what was, they had scalped off of our people, right? The Choctaw, the Cherokee, the Blackfoot, the Sioux, the Creek, Wampanoag, etc. At one point, eventually, even maybe probably some of the Muskogee back then. I could be wrong on that. Maybe some of the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquois Nation, but might not have gotten that far, quite that far as of yet. It was getting there, but probably not that far as of yet. But still, they took the stuff that they had basically taken off of those who they had taken out via genocide, and put them on and put on what you would call it a blackface, but back then they might call it copper face. And they put on war paint, right? At least the best that they knew how, and they went woo 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 woo, and they went around and they threw tea off, and they said, we don't want to pay the taxes on the tea. So they threw the taxes off because they understood that anybody pays taxes is in debt, and if you're in debt to somebody, you're a slave to them. And so they said they didn't want to pay taxes, so they threw it off the ship, and they said, we're the Americans. So what they, right? Because they were Englishmen. They were Englishmen. These are English colonies. If you recall, it was more than even 13. So there were two other colonies that were supposed to fight with them that were in what you call Canada today. And they decided not to fight because England was going to come first into them. And if nobody was going to help them to defend, they was like, well, we're not going to die off. So that's when it became 13 colonies left. And if you recall, your founding fathers like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and Monroe and Madison and Adams, et cetera, right? Hancock. These founding fathers didn't even want to fight. They said that they want to pay the taxes. And then they said, we're not going to pay the taxes. Then King George, who him and George Washington were like this, King George says, you know what, I'm done with y'all. Y'all are traitors to the crown. You're traitors to England, and we're going to take you out. And they actually asked all these founding fathers that you're like, they were so brave. They actually were like, oh, we're sorry, please don't do anything to us. And King George wouldn't respond, which meant he was coming for them. Not coming for all of the persons in the colonies. He was just coming for who? For those persons that you call the founding fathers. Those who were Masons. Those founding fathers, right, could have squashed everything by turning themselves in, and maybe they still would have lost their life, but there wouldn't have had to been a bunch of lost life. But they said, no, we're not going to stand for that. So then they started fighting against their own countrymen who lived in these colonies. It was, a lot of persons forget, it wasn't just English that were sending persons over here to fight. A lot of the fighting was happening, it was like 50-50. A lot of the persons in the colonies wanted to remain English and British, and then half of them were being told, no, we're Americans now, and it's unfair that we have to pay taxes on this stuff. And some of the persons were like, we can't even afford what you guys are buying. We're not getting taxed. But they had to train them to say, hey, no, now change yourself into an American. Say that you're native to the Americas. That's right, right. And a lot of persons don't know this. It was a fight over Masons who wanted to keep slavery. A lot of you think that the Civil War, 1861 through 1865, which actually starts with the Kansas Wars, which actually keeps going back further and further. But a lot of you think that that the Civil War was the beginning of us fighting about slavery, when George Washington and them were fighting for slavery against the British. Yeah, somebody came on here. I was waiting for a history lesson, but we have to know what we're exiting from, because this is the Exodus series. So why would we need to exit from a wicked system and you don't know what the wickedness is? So George Washington was not a Christian. George Washington believed he was worthy of worship. Now, question for you, because some persons hear this and this and that. What's the greatest evidence that one has, besides just going and visiting his home at Mount Vernon in Virginia, right outside D.C.? But besides that, what's the greatest evidence that we have that George Washington desired to be worshipped? Matter of fact, what's the greatest evidence that I can show you that even though you wouldn't think so, you actually serve in a country? If you think of the United States as a country, it's not as a corporation. If you don't believe me, look up in law, 28 USC 3002-15, subsection A, right? That law tells you that the United States is not a country. It tells you that the United States is a corporation. A corporation is a false person. It's a fake person. And a fake person owns other fake persons. That's why your birth certificate is in all caps, which is why you're allowed to be treated the way you're treated, right, under their legal system, because you're born under that system, or who you were, your natural person is not even considered. If you don't know, in law, there's an artificial version of you and a natural version of you. A lot of you, when you get all caps on your checks, you get all caps on your cards, you get all caps on your birth certificate, you don't know that's them saying that's the artificial version of you. So they are using that as a person, and every time you put your real signature on it, you're signing off that they can treat you in an artificial manner. That's law. You said that giant astronaut pole. So yeah, so it's not necessary. Well, I'm not gonna come from that perspective. I think I see where you're going with that, but that's exactly where I was headed. So what you talk, at least if I caught you correctly, right? That's right. Straw man. Persons don't know what a straw man is legally, right? That's why for all of you getting trust and doing this or whatever, make sure you know what is a straw man and what's not. If you can control your straw man, cool. But make sure you know what a straw man is or is not, or else you're gonna get got out here. All right, and these are things we should be teaching our babies. As babies don't even have a clue, right? We're using their credit, not even making sure that they're ready to go ahead and have ownership over. If there's going to be artificial persons out here, then you might as well have a couple artificial persons for yourself, depending on what you're doing, right? Or at least know how to control your artificial person. That being said, though, that pole that he just mentioned is what you guys call the George Washington Monument. Everybody probably knows, even if you've never been to DC, even if you've never been there to the National Mall, you've probably heard of or seen a picture of, right? The Washington Monument, the George Washington Monument. The George Washington Monument, the straw man, not strong man, the straw man, the straw man. Right, and there's many different places. We even teach some of this stuff at SOC University for those who are interested in taking classes and stuff down the road. But basically your straw man is the fake version of yourself. So if you want to get better and stuff, you have to get You have to recognize when they're dealing with you as not your real self. Like even when you go to court, for example, a lot of persons don't know. If you're ever put on trial, your birth certificate's put on trial. You're not on trial. That doesn't mean that you can't, right? Because a lot of us have done so much stuff under our birth certificate that said, hey, if you're not, that's why we talk about public and private. That's why your Bible says, be in the world, but not of it. It's deeper, right? In the world. The word world, even in the Greek, is cosmos, not C-O-S-M-O-S, but K-O-S-M-O-S, right? Cosmos with a K means a system. So when it says, for Yahweh loved the world, or Elohim so loved the world, right, that he gave his only begotten son, it doesn't mean he so loves everybody up in that piece. It means he so loved his system that he gave his only begotten son to bring his system. Right? Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, a child to us is born, a son to us is given. The government has been put upon his shoulders, and his name, his authority is what? Wonderful Counselor, the mighty Elohim, the everlasting Abba, and the Prince of Shalom. Right? Those are authorities that he's been given, and he's come to do what? To establish or reestablish the government of Yah here upon the earth realm. Right? So you have to know what you're dealing with. When we talk about private and public, you can't really worship Yah in the public, because to worship him in the public is to worship him in the government. That's what the word public means by law. So a lot of you go, oh man, I'm going to go out and I have rights. I can do this in the public. In the public means it's something that belongs to the state. Doesn't mean it belongs to the people. When they say this is a public park, they're not saying that you can come in and say what happens with the park. The police will still come in there and get you if you do whatever you feel like doing, right? Right? If you say it's a private park, then that means somebody owns it outside of the government. So public, in a sense, just means the world or the wicked system, right? And private means that we have an opportunity to come out the system and do something amongst ourselves, right? Once again, you're supposed to know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. Christ teaches us that. So a lot of us are trying to fit into systems that do not make sense, or a system that's not for us, because it's not for you. The system is not built for you to be free. The system is built for you to be, to be owned, regardless of what color you are, my guy, my gal. That's what the system is based off of, right? That's just the latest iteration of it. It's for you to start worrying about racism. But before, it was white versus black, right? And Christian nationalism and doctrine of discovery and white man's burden and lost cause rhetoric and Darwinism. And yes, I mentioned Darwinism because Darwinism is based off of preserving a favored race. And guess which race he said is favored, right? So, but even before then, go back, Rome. Yeah, Rome had so-called persons and Gentiles and persons you're trying to the dub is Esau, even though that doesn't work properly. But if you go back to Rome, you had persons that sat on Rome like Septimius Severus. Septimius Severus is African, North African to be exact, and his two sons sat upon the throne as well. They were emperors as well. Guess what? They didn't do anything to release you either, because it wasn't about color. It was about coming against the Negro or coming against those who were in the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of Israel. Go back before that. You deal with the Greeks. What were the Greeks doing in Maccabees? The Greeks, right? A lot of you forget that even, the Spartans, who tried to stay separate from the Greeks, to be fair, a lot of them. But that being said, Athenians and Spartans and stuff, a lot of you don't know that the guy who says, this is Sparta, and kicks the guy into the well, the deep well in the movie 300, who plays King Leonidas, or what you call Leonidas. He was swarthy and he had locks, which means that you had Greek leadership doing things against us, and they were so-called black persons. If you go back before then, you go back to Persians. Guess what? You'd have to at least, even though they were darker back then, but even by today's standards, they'd be called persons of color, right? If you were to go back before then, you got to deal with who? Assyria. Guess what? Babylon. Babylon, persons that live in Iraq. And if you look at the original Iraqis that still exist there today, guess what they look like, right? But they were still doing things to Israel, still enslaving persons. If you go back to the Assyrians, same deal. Go back to Kemet. Kemet looked exactly like us. That's what the Bible says, that literally Joseph looked exactly like Kemetic persons, and we know what persons of Kemet look like. So it's not just only based upon your race, it's the same system. Now it's a new thing that they've added in to get you to think it's new. All they did was just say, oh, we're going to just deem it about color and stuff. But the reality is it's about anybody that has Negroid Negroid features. And if you know who the Negro is, then you'll know why that's important. We'll go on, Audrey. How you doing? How you doing, Benedict? How you doing, Leonard? How you doing, House of Yah? Shabbat Shalom. So yeah, so when we get into this, now we're talking about what? Going back to the George Washington Monument. How can we tell that George Washington wanted to be worshipped? Well, the George Washington Monument is known as an obelisk. And please be gentle with the language you use, but if somebody can answer me this, what is an obelisk? It's from Kemet. So George Washington is using something that comes from another culture. We don't know that, right? And he is a Mason studying things and trying to become, and eventually was a 33rd degree Mason. As a 33rd degree Mason, he's supposed to be worshipped. He's supposed to become his own Elohim, right? Like they do in the Mormon faith. But is anybody, what is an erection? Okay, we could say that, right? So yes, an obelisk is a phallus. It is, I don't know if this is the right word. Would we say a man's coitus? Or only women have? I don't know how you use that word. I could be using that one wrong. But it is a man's phallus. It is a man's private part. It is a man's penis. That's what an obelisk is. You didn't know that, did you? It is a phallic symbol. Phallic in nature, right? Okay, so that's what the phallus is. So when you see the George Washington Monument, you're looking at George Washington's phallus. I'm gonna say it again. It's gonna be tough, but I want to show you, right? This is what your nation. This is who you in, right? If when you go and you see the George Washington Monument, I taught my son, I taught Solomon this when he was young, because I wanted him to realize how disgusting some of the stuff he's seeing is, and he doesn't know. And once again, y'all see this in Kemet, and you go, oh, this is so great, and blah, blah, and you'll say it shows how straight we are, how we're not homoerotic, and it's like, no, I'm going to show you how, no. If you walking around and seeing men's phalluses sticking up everywhere, we got a problem, right? Or Netch's phallus. I don't care either way. I don't want to see nobody's phallus, right? You know what I'm saying? But persons swear up and down they want to be part of that culture. You're still building that calf. You still don't recognize the golden calf, and you're going away from the one who wants to help you, who, matter of fact, has already helped us so many times to escape the world, to exit. We need a modern exodus again. Prayerfully we get it right this time, but you know what? Many will not. So George Washington's monument is an obelisk. An obelisk is a phallus. Right? Some of you who were with us at the Memorial Day meetup last year, not this year, but last year, we met up in Washington, D.C. And we went and we stood there, we went there, we saw the stuff. And I did a live session from there too. We tried to do something on Patreon. It didn't work that well. I still got to do a makeup for that. I don't think I've ever done it. So I still got to at some point go through there and stop through there and do a teaching. So we'll try to do like one of our live sessions. Maybe we'll make it a Patreon special thing and y'all can just sit in and listen as I explain how that works. But long story short, the obelisk is George Washington's phallus, and the obelisk is erect. And if you notice, it's sticking out of the ground. Now, what do you put in the ground if you want to grow something? If you want to grow a tree, what does a tree start off as? It's going to be difficult. But I'm not telling you something. I'm telling you stuff you need to know. You need to know what's around you. You need to know what they're putting around, what kind of spirits are hovering over you, and what stuff you're trying to honor. What is it that you put in the ground? If I want to grow a tree, if I want to grow a bush, if I want to grow a vine, if I want to grow a flower, I have to put what in the ground? How you doing? I am okay. Right? If I want to grow something in the ground, what must I put? Thank you. I got to put a seed. Thank you, Brother Keith. Right? I got to put a seed in the ground. Thank y'all, right? How you doing, Sister Angela? Right? I got to put a seed. So you got a phallus, and then there's seed. On a man's body, there's a phallus, and then in the testicular region, there's a seed. That's the way it works, right? So what's going to impregnate a woman in her garden comes through the phallus, right? Through her private area, through her vaginal, area, and penetrates, and the seed is planted in the ground. That's how it works, right? Planted in the womb. How you doing, Sister Cher? ¿Cómo está, mi hermana? Gracias por tu presencia siempre. Right? Hopefully all is well. So this seed is in the ground. The phallus is there. Now, then, if you look over on the other side, now I know there's the Lincoln Memorial as well. I'm talking about, so look the opposite way. You guys recall this, there was a place that was messed over January 6th, 2021, um, called the Capitol Building, right? And on the top of the Capitol Building, there's there's a figure on top. There's a female. What is her name? A lot of y'all don't even know. We about to give you something. A lot of y'all don't even know why your capital, even though you don't. The city I'm about to mention by law is not even the capital, right? It's actually a territory. But let's get into this. Hey, on the top of the Capitol building, there's a female figure on top with wings. What is her name? I know who she represents, but what's her name? I'm just trying to show you something real quick. And I know July 4th is about to be hitting, and everybody gonna be proud to be in America. There's gonna be a lot of persons on the National Mall in the area that I'm telling you about. So if you don't know, there's a woman on top of the Capitol building, rather a female figure on top of the Capitol building that has wings. Her name is Columbia, right? So you have the Washington obelisk, the phallus, right? And on the opposite side, there you go. Yep, I see you now. Right, and on the opposite side, you have Columbia on top of the Capitol building. Columbia is a Greek deist, but or you would call goddess, but goddess is a Germanic title, so she's a Greek deist, and she represents in the Kemetic story Isis. So George Washington, he represents Osiris in the Kemetic story. A lot of y'all don't know, they're telling a story. A lot, once again, we don't know this, but he's a Mason, and Masons need to be worshipped. And so if you look around, if you go to Washington, D.C., you'll discover that there's all these monuments where these persons are worshipped. And they have domes, and they have all these different things, and they have places where people literally sometimes even are kneeling down to take pictures and do this and blah, blah. It's very interesting that we don't see the spiritual thought process behind it. But when you get a chance, I'll just focus on these two. So George Washington represents Osiris, obelisk sticking straight up. Columbia represents ISIS, right? And then anybody that comes out of the Congress building represents Heru, or anybody who's a child of the two, right, would be like Heru or Horus, would be their child. You said your great-grandfathers were all 33rd degree Masons. Okay, well, this is part of the stuff that they would be, learning and acting upon. This is part and parcel. Now, I know there's some persons that go slightly different ways, and some persons are trying to do it more righteous than others. But at the end of the day, this is part of what it is. We had somebody in our family, that wasn't our family, but they basically were watched by members of our family. It was a guy, an old guy, and helped to make sure that he was straight. And he would lose his memory, lose where he was, and he would start blurting out Masonic secrets. So, it was interesting, to say the least. Some of the stuff that you hear and be like, I don't know what that means. And later on in life, you hear it again. You're like, oh, that's what he was talking about, right? But anyways, so George Washington, right, is on top of, George Washington represents Osiris. Columbia on top represents Isis. Okay, so here's the story of Osiris and Isis in Heru or Horus. Osiris was supposed to be the head Netru. He was a big bad Netru, but a person didn't like him. He had a wife. His wife was Isis. She was represented as a woman that could turn into a bird, sometimes a woman that had wings. How you doing, Sativa? Thanks for being part of the community. You said, why did their intentions supersede your conviction? Why you can't rock? Why can't I call this obelisk a waste of rock? Oh, well, yeah, I see you. So watch this. So Osiris gets basically jumped by other Netrus, right? The Netrus that they worship. You have Netrus of the frogs, Netrus of the water, Netrus of blood, Netrus of the earth, Netrus of the sky, Netrus of the sun, Noon, Netru. That's why you say it's noonday, because Noon put the sun on her head, and when she got above them, it was noonday. That's why you call it noon when it's above your head. A lot of stuff. But these Netrus come together and they jump Osiris. They take his body, they rip it into pieces, cut it into pieces, whatever they did, and they put it all over the place. and they rip him apart to make sure that he can't, they even rip off, forgive my strong language here, they rip off his phallus even to ensure that he can't reproduce, right? So Isis later on is is flying around. She's trying to find her husband. She can't find her husband anywhere, but then she starts noticing, she's like, wait a minute, I see a leg, and I see this, and I see, oh wow. She realizes her husband has been ripped into pieces. So she gathers all the pieces together, but she cannot find his phallus. She can't find his penis. So since, and how you doing, Denise? Since she can't find his phallus, what she does is, she says, okay, I'm going to make, forgive me, I'm just telling you what it is. This is adult stuff I'm about to say here. So if there's babies watching, you might want to have the babies maybe step away for a few seconds. I've already kind of been going a little weird with some of this conversation for them anyways, but depending on how mature they are, or if they can handle this or whatever, you make the decision, right? I believe that I'm going to try my best to make sure I'm saying this as gently and as nicely as possible. But ultimately, you have, what was it I was saying? Oh yeah. So ultimately you have, come on. I'm sorry, so she can't find his phallus. So what she does is she makes a mock phallus, or what you might call a mock penis, or what persons today, just outright, you might call a dildo. She creates basically, a phallus. And she places it where his old phallus was. Now, depending on what version of the Book of the Dead you're reading, right, or what beliefs you get out of the Book of the Dead, if you even know about that and have gone through it, when this happened, either he became, Osiris either became a zombie, or he just stayed dead. But either way, she wanted to give birth to a child of his. She had not done so, so necrophilia takes place. I won't describe it. You use your imagination. But necrophilia takes place. And then out of that necrophilia, she becomes impregnated with the son of Osiris, who you know as Horus or Heru. So when you talk about that eye of Horus, that's what they're talking about. How you doing, Sister Beverly? And how you doing, Faiz Saladam? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Right? So, basically, Horus was somebody who had no phallus. Right? She committed whatever. And upon his body with no life, and Horus became, and Horus came out of that, out of what's Isis, his mother, did to Osiris. And by the way, for those of you who keep talking about there's no homosexuality and killing and stuff like that, Horus almost got impregnated by his uncle. Yeah. So it's a lot of crazy stuff in there. But that being said, now you take that to modern day, George Washington, guess what George Washington died of? They've changed it, by the way, recently to say we're not sure what we think, and now they're like, we think it might be something else. But for real, he actually died of syphilis. How you doing? Remember me? That's what he died of. He died of syphilis. So when he died of syphilis, he basically died of something that takes your ability to lose your phallus away. And he died of this because, as a general, right? They did this in England. They did this with him being the first. This whole term commander-in-chief is actually a British term. And wherever you were in the world fighting on behalf of the Brits, whoever was the highest ranking official was the commander-in-chief of that area. And if you were the guy over all of them, you were just the commander-in-chief, right? But that didn't mean you were the king. But the king technically was the commander-in-chief, right? So that's why you guys call your president commander-in-chief. So basically, George Washington was messing around. What happens with commander-in-chiefs is that a lot of persons want to make rank, and they would even allow their wives to be used by commander-in-chiefs so that hopefully they could come up on something, right? Women's women not having rights as much as y'all think they did. Right? That was a mindset that, hey, you might have to throw it back a little bit for commander in chief, but we trying to make it. So he was doing that, and he also was messing around with the persons that were committing genocide on, with women that they would have left over, Native Americans. He was also doing it with his slaves. More than likely male and female. Right? But he got syphilis. That means his thing ain't, especially back then, his thing ain't work. Right? I had sores all over and stuff, nasty stuff. I mean, we'll stop there, but he couldn't use his thing. So basically, he didn't have a thing to use, just like Osiris didn't. Then all of a sudden, after he dies, he needs a place for his seed to continue. Right now, he's thinking in a spiritual form, so he wants to exist in a spiritual form and be able to execute in a manner to be able to be better than what he was in the physical form. So all of a sudden, they erect an obelisk unto him. And then Isis, or now you know her as in the Greek version or the American version now, as Columbia. That's where you get Washington District of Columbia from. If you didn't know, some of y'all don't even know that, right? I'm not saying all of you didn't know that, but you'd be surprised how many persons have no clue why it's called Washington District of Columbia or Washington, D.C. It's because that you have George Washington's thing on one side, and you have Columbia on the other, and it's supposed to be a story. By the way, nothing can be built higher than Columbia, because remember, the story is supposed to be that Isis was searching all around Kemet to find the pieces of her husband to put back in place so that she could then put the obelisk on top and activate, right, the ability to be impregnated so that she could give birth to his children. But here is Columbia, and who's coming out of the place where Columbia is on top of? Who works in the Capitol? Who did they attack January 6th? Hear me now. Think about this. When they went and they attacked the Capitol, who are they attacking? These are supposed to be the children of Horus. And if you don't believe me, by the way, if you get a chance to go in the Capitol, ask them to take you to a place. There's a place in there where there's an altar and worship is done. And if you look straight up above, you'll discover that the same way that they have like Zeus and all that stuff painted in, they call it God, but it's basically Zeus and Apollos and all that painted, and they're all basically butt naked in above the church at the Sistine Chapel where Michelangelo painted. They have something very similar, and George Washington is up there, and there's a woman up there too, and you don't know that's Isis. And anybody who's coming out of the Capitol are supposed to be the children of George Washington. That means they've got to be Masonic themselves. And if they're not, they're not going to last that long. Because this is not a Christian nation, even though we're not Christian ourselves. I'm just telling you, it's not a Christian nation. You believe it's a Christian nation, or you were taught that the Bible is what a whole bunch of persons actually believe. They don't care about the Bible there. They care about having God-like power. So when we're sent before Pharaoh, beloved, I hope you're ready. When we're sent before Pharaoh, we're sent before these persons who believe they have God-like power. Their responsibility is not to take care of you. Their responsibility is, as far as they're concerned, is to make sure that you worship. How you doing, Sister Shima? Right? You shouldn't be, y'all want to, you don't like it when Trump outright depicts himself as Christ, right? And puts it on true social, right? That's too far. But you guys don't remember. See, you guys think when Obama was saying this, that, you guys go, oh, he was so humble, blah, blah. But may I direct your attention? I don't know why we're doing so much in movies today. It is what it is. You guys know that movie, Gladiator, right? Are you not entertained? There's also a part in there that is one of the words that everybody used to quote all the time, where I forget his name now. Great actor, kind of out there, but great actor. He said, "Am I not merciful?" You guys recall that? When he said in that scene, "Am I not merciful?" He's saying he's supposed to be worshipped. And he's busy telling you how merciful and humble and all these things that he is. Joaquin Phoenix, thank you. Yeah, he's. I give credit where credit due. He's a great actor. But when he yells out, "Am I not merciful?" He's saying that as somebody who desires worship, and the woman that's closest to him, so he thinks, should be worshiping him, and it frustrates him that she would betray him rather than worship. You hear stuff about these persons. Oh, he's so humble. He's so this or that. Look at this stuff, because some of these persons they don't realize you still worshiping. How you doing, Kirsten? What wasn't actually Christ? I'm sorry. What wasn't actually Christ? Because even the tarot cards we got to figure out, because the tarot cards are a mix and match of so many different cultures. They don't, they're usually not actually even going back to their original roots. But I'm not sure. I missed what you're responding to. And anybody coming in, I feel like there's a couple other persons. Sister Donna, welcome on. Thank y'all for liking and sharing and all that stuff. But there's somebody who, what was my reference to makeup? I didn't say anything about makeup. I'm pretty sure I didn't say anything about makeup. If I did, I don't know how much. Yeah, I don't think I said anything about makeup. I think I was just talking about the origins of certain things that we think that everybody would have gotten along with in Kemet. I think I said on the picture that we see in the background, there always be this leader, and in the harem, all the women are just beautiful and having fun. But the reality is that we're slaves. I don't think I said anything about makeup. Am I cool with Freemasons? No, not spiritually. Because you have to change the word. And anybody who changes the word is an enemy, is antichrist, right? Was that their original design? I'm not sure which design you're talking about. But yeah, if you have to change the word, then we have an issue. If you're antichrist, because Christ is the word, right? So if you have to change Christ, if you have to change the word, then we got an issue. And the depictions of fair, I don't know. I'd have to see which depictions. I guess many of them are okay. I'm not sure, but I'd have to. I apologize. I'm not sure which depictions. Certain ones are, certain ones aren't, and then certain ones are Egyptian, because Egyptian is different than Kemet, right? Egyptian, you're dealing more with not only Arabic, but also you're dealing with Greek. So when you're dealing with like, and Kemet is different as well. So sometimes they're taking the culture and doing stuff. Sometimes they're maneuvering it. I don't know. And how you doing? Is it so trill trail? So yeah, so a lot of persons don't catch that. A lot of persons do not recognize the thought process behind those things, right? A lot of persons don't. They do not consider, once again, the cultural connectivity. And so we're going to be brought before Pharaoh, even in a modern sense. You're going to be brought before leadership, and the leadership is designed to be worshipped, right? This is why if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you represent them, but you don't represent Yah, because you can't represent democracy, right? First of all, let me give you a heads up on something, right? And by the way, our theme for today is whether Moses or Aaron represent, right? Whether the person that Yah says you are the person that's ahead, the leader, or you're the person that's going to support and amplify what this leader does, or help them in the place where they can't be, but where they can't do things by themselves. Be somebody that is in righteousness and in truth and right lawful standing. And persons don't want to get called out on the fact that a lot of this stuff, that you think is meticulous, you only think it's meticulous because you don't think it should be gone through meticulously. If you go through it meticulously, you would find that a lot of persons are illiterate concerning the word. Because literacy means that you have to not just be able to read it, but you have to be able to translate, understand, interpret. Maybe not translate as much, because you should be able to at least know the transliteration and translation, and to know what was its origin. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against origins. So you have persons out here who are frustrated and mad about things when it comes to worship, and you don't even know that you worship George Washington. In order to be somebody that's part of the federal government, you have to worship. I mean, what I'm saying? Every nation has worship. It's really weird when I even hear our Afrocentric brethren and our FBA brethren now and our ADOS brethren now and our Caribbean brethren now and our European brethren now, right? Trying to say weird stuff like, oh, nobody ever really needed to worry about worship. And it's like, we don't have to worry about religion. And it's like, every country, every nation has a religion, has a national religion. You need to figure out what your religion is, right? That's the problem. You talking about the Bible, and they'll be like, "Well, the same persons who prayed, prayed to Christian God is the same person that was, are the same God that was prayed to by the Christian slave owner, or the same ones that were prayed to by the Christian slaves." And it's like, but there were Jewish persons who owned slaves, and there were Muslims who owned slaves, and there were agnostics who owned slaves, and there were Masons who owned slaves. See, we gotta, when we go before Pharaoh, you have to have a mindset that it's not about what these persons swore allegiance to publicly, it's about who these persons were privately. How you doing, Ruthless the Streamer? And how you doing, Apostle? Welcome back. Right? Like these persons could tell you, there's a lot of persons that say they believe in the Bible. But if I check, if you check somebody on some stuff, you'll find out a lot of persons don't believe. It's like if somebody come to me and say, I'm a Buddhist. And I say, okay, cool. Well, what are you in? Let's say they believe in the Dalai Lama. It's like, well, the Dalai Lama does this to little children. The Dalai Lama and his people, they used to, the reason why they can't take back over their place, or you should want them to, is because they were like whipping people in the streets. They were forcing women to have sex. They were doing all this stuff. And by the way, any Buddhist, not just Dalai Lama, but any Buddhist that believes that Buddha can be reincarnated is wrong, because Buddha himself told you that he would never be reincarnated. He left to go to one of the other realms according to your belief system, and he's never coming back again. If you don't follow your own belief system, therefore, then why should I listen to you any further concerning your belief? Right? If there's somebody who says that they're Muslim, and I say, okay, well, bare minimum, do you pray 5 times a day? Is your prayer rug clean? Do you clean yourself before you pray? When you use the restroom, how you doing, Sister Deborah? I hope I said shalom earlier, right? When you use the bathroom, there's a certain thing you're supposed to do with your right hand when you use the toilet, or else you're not Muslim. I'm not even joking, right? I won't even go into it. You can look it up for yourself if you like. But you see what I'm saying? Like all these different things, you have to realize what's going on. Right? I'm in Georgia. You have to realize what's going on. A lot of persons are trying to have honest dialogue. Like, there's persons that say, okay, you're into science, and science has nothing. Science is just only, it doesn't need us to have any faith in anything like that. Okay, fine then. So tell me the scientific proof that you have that the solar system looks the way it does. And somebody will say, oh, see, you're wrong, mathematically this. And then I'll say, no. Scientifically, you have to admit to me that you've never had anything that can go above the solar system or beneath it. Everything that you've ever seen is seen on the basis of one plane. Did you know that? If you're a scientist, if you're somebody that says you're into whatever the modern scientists say, because they changed what happens with creation all the time. You in Georgia right now too? Okay. Praise God. Right? But these cats change, and they don't tell you the truth. Like, do you know, if you ask somebody that for real is a scientist, ask them, when is the last time that they've ever shot a rocket straight up? And somebody say, oh, here he goes again, one of these flat. No, I'm coming through science. What you say is science, what they call science. Can you shoot a rocket straight up? I'm just asking a question, right? You see what I'm saying? You have to realize, Moses, Aaron, we got to represent wherever we go. We got to know truth. Okay, we might be able to do that. Make it. I don't think it's too far. Right? Here we go. Slavery was a sin. Why would the slavery God instruct on it instead of ordering abolition? First of all, the word slave didn't exist in the Bible. But where did they come from? Because that word slave and stuff, slave Bibles are written, things change. We never go back to see what was changed. With that being said, real quick, you ready for this? when they talk about slaves or they talk about how to treat servants, first of all, some of it's indentured servitude, and also you forget, why don't you mention how every 3 years, every 7 years, and definitely every 50th year, everybody's supposed to be debt free, because anybody that's in debt is a slave, and anybody that's a slave is in debt. But also they came out of a situation where many persons were enslaved in the mind, kind of like Liberia. If you know what happened with Liberia, if you send a whole bunch of persons to Liberia and just say, hey, all of you former slaves, get together. If you taught them that slavery is what they're supposed to come out of, then what are they going to do? They're going to have genocide, right? So what does the Most High do when they come out? He says, all right, you guys are trying to do this, trying to enslave. We're going to start getting this stuff and phasing it out. Every 3 years, you got to get rid of it. Every 7 years, if you try to find a loophole of it, you're going to get rid of it. And every 50th year, definitely, you're going to get rid of it. And they didn't use that term slave, because even the term slave comes from Slavs, right? So those persons who hate the Eastern Europeans, like a lot of Western Europeans do, that's more so a term for them and what they were doing to them before they got ready to do it to us on a grand scale, right? But that being said, no, all this explained. Yeah, I know exactly what these words mean in their origin. So when you talk about these things and stuff like that, what were they coming out of? They were coming out of slavery. And if they're coming out of slavery, you got to make sure you deal with the persons who try to enslave, just like there's stuff to where they abuse women. So guess what? You got to phase that out. You got to start putting laws together to protect women, which is why you have to have laws in place of even divorce, because y'all didn't even want divorce, but because men mistreated women so much to where they wanted to get, the only way you could go ahead and have sex with another woman was either to divorce her or to basically have something happen to her where you took her life. So the Most High says, okay, we'll work with something called divorce. But then later on, when Christ shows up, he says it was never y'all's plan for that to be in existence anyways. He said that you guys, Moses asked for that because of the hardness of your heart. So you're talking about something within a or as if it's within a vacuum. And you don't even know, all the stuff that goes along with it. Now, meanwhile, with that, though, once again, you don't talk about Jubilee. You don't talk about every 3 years. You don't talk about every 7 years where everybody has to be free. Now, that being said, why is it that we don't come at Thomas Jefferson and Americans that until the 1970s still had slaves? Not something that's made up. Like, persons have been interviewed, the former slaves have been interviewed. You said, oh, yeah, you go into that and all that stuff. So would I accept my daughter's rapist? First of all, that's not even what it says. Because what's the thing? If somebody does do something like that, you have to run. You have to run outside. And if we get our hands on you, we get to take your life. Right, Elrose? Is that part of it? Did you read that part? Or you only read a little piece of it and you heard somebody else talk about it and you made sure that that's as far as you went? If I get my hands on them, they dead. That's part of it. If I get my hands on them, they're dead. You would agree with that, right? Okay, but you don't want to, okay. So we're not going to do that. Because Deuteronomy is the reiteration of the law. Go back to the origin. Deuteronomy, right? On the français, it's talking about the second law. So it's basically known today as the second law, reiteration law. You're saying basic biblical law, but you're not being basic. Because that's the reiteration of it. Go back to the origin of it. So what does it say in the origin? And what's the context? Once again, if somebody were to off a woman and she was carrying a child, they have a right to try and, before they can ask for forgiveness, do whatever and do all this stuff, right? And that's, by the way, if the father chooses to forgive. The father don't have to choose to forgive nothing. But your mindset is only, hey, I'm going to try and disprove this one thing. Now, meanwhile, why is it okay, right? Why, may I ask you this? Why is it okay that a woman can go to another woman today and say, hey, I know that you as a woman, I'm glad that you went ahead and that you survived, I guess. But for real, I'm kind of sad that you survived because I wish your mom had been able to be successful with her abortion. Why is that okay? Because that's basic human rights and basic human decency. Why is that okay? Why is it okay that your child has to go to school and be taught that they have to lie? Be taught that George Washington, was the first president and he wasn't. With the water and all that stuff or whatever. Yeah, that's if a woman. That's if a woman's been unfaithful, then y'all won't allow that seed to go ahead and go on. Once again, though, you won't answer my question. I'm hip. I know you think you know more than I. I'm asking you questions about your belief system because your belief system says everything about mine is there. So consider mine to be trash. You as the person who has the better morality, instruct me. Why is it okay that somebody can stand in front of a woman and say, hey, I really wish that you were dead because your mom should have right over everything in your body. If you're talking so bad about slavery, why is it okay that nobody's busting prisons open to make sure that my people that are still enslaved in record levels at the same at a greater percentage than what we were during chattel slavery? Why is it okay? Why is it okay that if I say, hey, I actually know what this means in its origin and this is what it means, you haven't read it, but you keep trying to argue something, that's bad apologetics. Why is it okay for you to act like I have Dunning-Kruger, syndrome, but you sitting up here doing all this weird stuff? Why is it that I ask a question about even something as far as science? Okay, cool. When you go above, who has seen the solar system from above? Yeah, you won't answer. You won't answer, and that's okay. Right? A non-answer is an answer. You said, why? Y'all didn't allow slavery. Okay, question. Watch this. If somebody came out of Kemet, and they came out of Kemet and they tried to make slaves, is that because y'all taught Israelites to be enslaved people, or is that because Kemetic persons enslaved people and taught you it was okay? Right? If there's so-called black persons that are still out here trying to enslave their brothers and sisters, why is that okay? Who taught you that? I'm not saying no black person is ever enslaved, but come on. If you came out of some place, once again, what happened in Liberia? Is that because black persons taught each other it was okay to enslave? And so if the Most High Yah says, hey, I'm going to deal with this, and once again, why are we not telling the truth about these words that we're using today are not the original words? Why are we not talking about that this stuff was changed even in slave Bibles? You said Mark Twain attested that different pulpits preach abolition and slavery, both Bible-backed. Kind of. But why is it that we don't talk about John Brown, who talked about abolitionists, and the abolitionists tried to call him crazy? Or how John Brown would have to defend black persons who would be going into homes who would be free, but they wouldn't treat the black persons with as much respect. They just believe they shouldn't be treated like chattel, but they should be treated like equals. What about the fact that there's a whole bunch of persons who fought with so-called black persons who hated the persons that they fought with? What about persons such as General Sherman, who went down and tore Georgia up and made sure that 40 acres and a mule, right, field order 15 was done there in Savannah, Georgia, right outside of the First African Baptist Church, right? If you know about that, and the Hebrew characters and stuff that were written there, right, of actual Hebrews that came into slavery and said they were Hebrews and made this church as they were slaves. They had the stuff basically with the pastor of that church and 19 others. But why don't we talk about the fact that even with that happening, General Sherman, after the war is done, says, oh, I just did that to break the back of the Confederacy. I actually hate black people, and I wish that we didn't have to do that, and I think that they're going to come over and take our stuff, which leads to persons such as Democrats and Dixiecrats doing stuff like, what they did with starting the KKK, which really was just nothing more than the reiteration of what's happening in the Spanish Inquisition. That's why they wore the same thing. Why are we not talking about that part? You see what I'm saying? Like, you're saying all these things. We don't want to talk about the slave Bible. We want to talk about Thomas Jefferson, but what about how Thomas Jefferson not only lived by a slave Bible, well, he didn't live by it, but he kept the slave Bible and even ripped some of the pages out of that Bible because it told him that he needed to be a better person. But then also he came up with the Jefferson Bible, where he took all the teachings of Christ, and anything he didn't like that Christ said, he ripped it out. Why are we not acting like this stuff wasn't changed over time? The word slave didn't even exist. And Israelites, well, if you want to say they had slaves or had a slave mind, they were being taught to phase it out. By the time that they got to Canaan, they had phased it out. What are we talking about? I continue a belief system that oppressed many? Sure. So black folk, we wrote the Bible. We used it to enslave who? Now, when white person took over and there was iconoclastism, sure, we can talk about that. But these black, if we're going to use these terms, because we use them basically because you're talking about colonial and social constructs, and you're not talking about them correctly. But and you're still skipping over the stuff that I'm saying, you won't answer it because you have no answer for it. That being said, though, right? And this is what we're talking about. Moses, Aaron, whenever you're dealing with Pharaoh, you got to represent. When somebody comes in talking this stuff or whatever, they have no clue about culture, context, connectivity, whatever. You said, I continue the belief system. What's the belief system that I have? In my belief system, I make sure my people get fed. Did they do that? Is that what other persons are doing? So yeah, you're talking about people can use the same canon to be able to be on both sides of things. Sure. Just like people can use science to prove their point on both sides. Just like persons can use English to use their points on both sides. Just like person can use sex to use the point on both sides. What are we talking about? That doesn't mean that you're apologetically sound because you're mentioning that somebody can misuse something. Your automatic response is to say that I'm either using it correctly because it's always correctly used wrong, right? Or that I'm misusing it because I don't understand enough about life in general that it doesn't mean anything. Meanwhile, you still haven't been able to answer things about the origin of what I speak. This is why I can't believe your report. You can't be my teacher because you don't know, because you're not disciplined in what I'm disciplined in. I'm still waiting for you to tell me why we should go ahead and allow a system. If you're in the United States of America and you consider yourself to be an American, there's more of my people that have been oppressed under that have been hung under that, right? Than what would happen during the Confederacy. Why should we keep trying to do what the Americans tell us to do? The modern Americans. How many Native Americans got killed? How many groups, how many Wampanoag have you ever met in your life? What did they do to the Kosa? What did they do to Yoruba? What did they do to Igbo? My questions are not impossible to follow. My questions are straight. There's more persons in the United States under the United States flag is responsible for way more. If you take 4 years, right, and divide it by, what is it supposed to be, 250, 260 years? I don't even care, right? That's supposed to be celebrated 250, right? You're at like 2% or less than 2%. That means in less than 2% of the United States history, and I'm just starting at 1776, it starts before then, but this history of persons who do atrocities to my people, there's more blood, right? There's more blood on their hands that we talk about with a whole bunch of others. The Christian nationalists who changed what the Bible is and have been changing it even from their ancestry, even if we talk about versions of the Bible that were written in English in the 1500s, to versions that were written in Latin and Greek and all the stuff that was changed all the way back to Constantine and others. And there's more persons that are there. No, you're using ad hominem. Ad hominem doesn't mean anything. See, this is why, once again, Aaron, Moses, be ready against Pharaoh. He has no clue what he's talking about. You calling me anxious because you can't answer a question. You're looking weak. Where's your argument at? I at least gave you an answer. You just say your answers are impossible to follow, or your questions are impossible to follow. They're not impossible to follow. You have no answer. I asked a simple question even about what I really had started with was, hey, can we launch, if you ask scientists today to launch a rocket straight up, they will tell you that they cannot. And it's a basic thing. I was even talking about, even if you believe that the earth rotates, if the earth rotates too fast for it to go up, that means that you've never seen anything from up above. You can only see it from the side. You hear what I'm saying? You can only see it from the side. And while you're talking about oppression, you're so busy fighting for the oppressor to tell me to shut up. Meanwhile, you can't answer me why you want me to fight or to be with the oppressor. I fought for the oppressor as a veteran, and I realized that they treated me like trash then. Where's all this great treatment that I've been getting? Where's all this great treatment that my people have been getting? You keep talking about, oh, because of this and that, because you think I'm a Christian. I'm not a Christian. Or because the Bible says this and because somebody changed something. Then I tell you what it said in its origin, and you still won't read it in its origin. You're illiterate. So if you're illiterate, because literacy doesn't mean that you can just read something phonetically or that you can parrot, the teachings of others, right? It means that you can actually look at it for yourself, and you have understanding, and you don't. That's right. Who shall believe our report? It's not yours to report. Why don't you talk about that in the Bible too? How it says that cats like you will come in who don't want to follow it, but will tell us what it means. Well, if you don't want to follow it in its origin, then you can't know what it means originally. So how can you try to be giving me some false translation? I'm supposed to just go with it. You said all my stuff is impossible to follow. No, it's not. Because you've been able to follow it enough to keep trying to ask me nonsensical answers. All right, anyways. You see what I'm saying? That's why you got to be ready. Because you got to know. You got to know. The Bible tells us, once again, know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. This guy is talking about things that are written. I challenge the things that he's challenging the things that somebody else rewrote. And I say, okay, cool. Let's just assume everything that I believe is wrong. Here's the stuff that your people wrote. Why won't you answer? Causing us free will? Yeah, people have free will to do whatever they want. You could be wrong, you could be right. You believe that I have free will, but I'm using my free will to go ahead and be enslaved and get rid of it. That's a choice that I'm making. So why are you so upset about me using my free will? You said free will were damage you knew pedophiles would cause? Anybody that's been a pedophile, including in the Bible, is stuff that we've called out. There's assumptions about some persons. There's some persons that actually, we got to be like, yeah, we got an issue with that. And also a lot of stuff we forget that just because it happened doesn't mean that Yah was with it, and doesn't mean that we should continue it. But here's my last question for you, El Rose, because you haven't done anything other than just try to argue. You're helping me, though, because you're helping me to show persons we need to know things for ourselves and not just believe that somebody swears up and down and they know more than you, right? And you probably feel the same way about your side of the argument. And I don't have to disrespect you and call you names or whatever just to get there, right? I'm just telling you if something's factual or not. With that being said, once again, I'm not a Christian. You keep doing this Christian thing. Christians do this thing called, the Bible talks about persons that mix iron and clay. That means that they take the things that are, they try to romanticize the origins of word. That means they have to change it. But the reality is that a lot of what you read in the Bible, if you actually go back to the origin before it was called the Bible and before Christians were involved with it, it existed differently, right? So you're making a bad assumption, once again, right? But that being said, here's the last thing I'm going to do, and then I'm going to let you go, right? And I'm going to block you because you've been on before. And you still haven't done anything outside of just try to argue. Like, you know, if it's an argument, if it's a real debate, you know, it should be something to where you actually should know the other side, and you don't know what I believe. So that being said, in all these things that you're saying, all these things that you're doing, and all these things that you're saying that are wrong, because you won't answer anything for me, you just come back with another question, because you won't answer. I even gave you a chance to answer as being the authority and being saying I have no clue, everything I say is wrong, and you still wouldn't give me an answer. So I know what time you want. That being said, though, if everything that you say is correct, this is my last point. Not even the question. This is my last point on that. You're talking about free will. If of my own free will, because that's what free will is, even if I don't believe that I have free will, I actually believe I have free will. But that being said, you're acting like I said you shouldn't. That's something you think, because you think certain Christians who believe in something called predestination, which once again is not original. The word even predestined that they're using, they didn't mean predestined, but it actually meant they're getting that from a scripture that said, for those that Yah foreknew, he also predestined, but it didn't say that. It said for those that Yah had forecasted to or forecasted would become, he also prioritized them. That's what it actually says. So when they talk about predestination, here we go again. You're using a word that's not original and has nothing to do with my belief, because I try to make sure I go to the origins of the words, what they meant. Eschatology, right? Right? Eschatology and proper eschatology, not just eschatology to get us to whatever we want, not pseudo eschatology, but actual eschatology, right? You said, where did I get that from? By looking it up in the Bible. If even on a basic thing, which is this is a real basic thing to use, it's not in depth, but even if you go to Strong's Concordance, you'll see that word there, and you're talking about Romans chapter 8, verse 29, that comes after, for we know that all things work together for Tabah, for those that love Elohim and are called according to his purpose. And verse 29, right after that first word there is not foreknew. It actually is priorizo, which is to prioritize. And then that word predestined is not predestined. I'm sorry, that word is priorizo, which is like forecasted, excuse me. And then that word predestined is not predestined, it is priorizo, which is to prioritize. And thank y'all for the love, appreciate you, right? So so persons don't know this. So you're quoting something that's not correct. And even the context of that says that it's not for everybody. It says for those that are saints. And in Romans, it's making a distinction between those that are in the world and those that have become part of the kingdom of heaven, part of the kingdom of Israel. One and the same. So Holy Spirit, it says she comes, yes, she, because it's considered to be a she in Hebrew, believe it or not. So she comes on behalf of saints, and she intercedes on our behalf, and that's why all things work together for Tabah. And so for those that he had forecasted to and forecasted would become, he also prioritized them. That's what that actually said. But you read it in English and you'll say, "Oh, well, for we know that all things work together for those who love God and are called according to His purpose, and therefore those of us who He foreknew, He also predestined." But that's a change that somebody made, because also too you're talking about a change to what they're doing in Eurocentric theology to support what they're doing in Eurocentric presence. You said an absolute hypocrisy served as true. No, tell me what I just said that's hypocritical. I'm saying we need to go back to the original. What's hypocritical about that? By the way, if you call me a hypocrite, I'm saying live up to the criteria. Hypocrite, hypo means it's underneath. Hyper means it's above. What are we talking about? Right, but my last point, once again, if it's about free will, like you said, and then I'm going to go ahead and you don't have to worry about ever being on here again. Right? But if what I'm doing is wrong because you're saying a free will, then if what you're saying is right because of free will, then persons have free will to believe whatever they want. And all that's going to happen to our bodies is just that we die and we crumble, right? And that we go into the universe and will be used for some greater purpose anyways. So why do you care what I do by my own free will if it doesn't matter? Why do you have to use ad hominem to win an argument if by free will I can make whatever choice I want? Why do you have to fight about what's moral or not when morality is just whatever you feel like it? Because morality doesn't even evolve, because what morality was you? Do animals have morality? Do chimps do things because they're moral, or do chimps do things because they're chimps? If from your belief system, why do you care about my free will? My choice of my free will? The reason is because something in you clicks and says morality. Morality, by the way, the ITY added to the word makes it the prism that you look through, right? So that's it. So why do you care what I say? Why is it that you had to come on here and be like this and that or whatever? Because you think that what I say matters. Why does it matter? Maybe because there's a prism we should look through to see what's moral. That should be our morality. Why does it matter? Because there's something that you think should be universal. If it's universal, universe means a single spoken sentence. That's what it means. And if I know that universe meant before somebody had to change it to fit what they want now, then if universe means a single spoken sentence, maybe I should know who spoke it. All right. Thank you. Because outside of that, I'm actually getting outside. Believe it or not, you were helping me to inform the people. Right? You said, why is it so? He's already gone. See, like I said, he's just going to the simple thing. Why is it so disgusting to see a God that saw the Holocaust and decided to plant a tree? I don't know. Why is it so disgusting to him that he's still not trying to fight for the rights of my people? But he wants to fight against somebody that he says doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying? These persons are hypocritical. That's a hypocrite. That's a hypocrite. Right? Right? He's already gone, but I'm going to do this for y'all. Hey, make sure that you are willing to be held accountable. Right? Make sure you're willing to be held accountable, because he's talking about abolition. Meanwhile, I just talked about what is he doing to free our people that are in prison. He has no answer. Be ready to be held accountable. I'm ready to be held accountable. If somebody says, why did y'all allow suffering? Because he allowed free will. Well, why won't he get rid of suffering? He said he would. It's by your free will. It depends on which one, Chef. Right? But I mean, the same thing he's talking about. By his free will, he's decided to say he's going to blame Yah for the Holocaust. Did Yah inform Adolf Hitler? No. Did Yah allow the SS Christians to support Hitler before Hitler said you can't be Christian anymore? No. Did Yah inform the Ashkenazi, who put themselves in positions thinking that they wouldn't be got later on? No. Did Yah inform the woman king and her followers, the homie, to do what they did, enslave other persons of their color? No. Right? Could they have listened to the word of Yah, the true word, and done what was better? Because they lived around Negroes, they lived around Israelites that were in their around them. And they decided not to listen. They decided to keep on enslaving. If they decide to do that, then that's on them. And I'm sorry, Galatians chapter 4, verse 14. I, I have a Bible around here somewhere. I got so much stuff that I've been throwing around. I'm sorry. Um, oh yeah, that's all the way in the front. But we have a whole series on Galatians, so I'm not really focused on that today. We can go over it some other time, but I'm not really like focused on Galatians right now. I'm not really focused on it today. So, I'm still, believe it or not, I was using that to show us how, whether you be Moses, the leader, or Aaron, somebody who's still a leader, but somebody who helps with the leadership of what y'all put in place, we have to represent. You have to be able to have a defense for that which you believe. When somebody says, why do you hope in something? You have to be able to defend it to a certain degree. Now, if I just use the rest of the time to defend it, that's kind of crazy. Yeah, we still do Hebrew characters class and stuff. I still actually got to put some more information out for some of it. And actually, I've been putting stuff out. If you're somebody who was in that group with us in February and March, and you still didn't finish some of the classes, I put some new classes and stuff out too. So send me a text and remind me, and I can send you the links to make sure that you get your money's worth for that little deal that we did during that month. Right. And I even got my wife actually just got us a new whiteboard. I just haven't had an opportunity to put it together. We're going to use it for some of the stuff that we're teaching in this Exodus series. And thank you, yes, once again, everybody who's on. We appreciate you. Thank you for your like, share, subscriptions, hit the notification tab. Thank you for any questions, comments, and concerns that you may have. Also, thank you to those who give in many different ways as far as your time, talent, effort, energy. And yes, even including some of you who help monetarily or help with money to help us with what we do around the world. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for the repost. How you doing, Sister Cassie? But yeah, in these things, so in the Galatians series, we kind of already touched on that. I think I pretty much know what you're saying, but let me just go there to be sure. But yeah, so we have to be ready because you're going to go before Pharaoh, and you're going to go before Pharaoh. If you recall, see, Aaron, it wasn't Moses that put down his rod before Pharaoh against the magical practicing priests. It was actually Aaron. Moses said, you're going to go do this, but then he sent Aaron, and Aaron amplified what Moses did, not just only what Moses spoke, but what Moses did. So whatever Yah told Moses to do, in other words, whatever Yah does, Moses had to do. And whatever Moses had to do, Aaron had to do. Right? It's chain of command. And so as we should all be doing the same thing. You see Galatians 4:14, and my temptation which was in my flesh, ye despise not, nor rejected, but ye receive me as an angel of Elohim, as Christ. So basically, Paul had a thorn in his flesh. We don't know exactly what it was he was dealing with. More than likely, it was some kind of physical health thing, but it could have been he was dealing with something to where it was really difficult, and he was trying his best to stay committed to righteousness. But whatever it was something that was impeding his progress in the kingdom, and it was something he had to fight. Well, it was something that wanted to impede his progress in the kingdom, but he was always doing what was there. I really believe it to be sickness, because he said that in Galatians 3, I believe, that everybody is getting upset with him when he's telling them more about the law and telling them to get back to the law. But meanwhile, when he was there and he was saying what all the stuff they agreed with, he was like, everybody would have plucked out their eye to be able to help him, right? So, so literally he was like, when I was sick, y'all would have went way above and beyond to help me out, in sickness. But then all of a sudden I'd say that you guys need to be better and you guys hate me now. So he says that, I believe, in Galatians 3. And then Galatians chapter 4, verse 14, what you're talking about, he's getting to a place to where he says, where he's basically just saying like, he was in a bad position, and he was still sick, he was going through things, but persons still accepted him, and they accepted him as the angel of Elohim, which is another way of just saying messenger. So there can be angels that have, that you think of as having wings. Technically angels, not all angels have wings, archangels have wings, but angels are always recognized, even spiritual ones are always thought, sometimes even thought to be as a human. They look like human beings from afar off, even up close sometimes. But then you have angels that are considered to be humans as well, but they're angels. Angel just means messenger. Okay, we can see it later. Yeah, so that's all that was saying. You said it's the wrong scripture. Okay, but yeah, so back to what we were talking about. How you doing, Dylan? Thanks for being on. Thank you for sharing the live. Thank you for sharing the live, Minister Akita, and welcome on if I didn't say so already. So, and all these different things that we're speaking on. right? And all the things that we're speaking on with Pharaoh. You're going to be sent before Pharaoh. And recall, the word tells us that Pharaoh will say no. And that's okay. Pharaoh will say no, and we have to be ready for that, right? When Pharaoh says no, be ready for that, right? But also, if you recall, when Aaron put his rod down as Moses instructed him, and when Aaron puts his rod down, his rod still ate up the wisdom or the serpents of the other side. Remember, in Hebrew, the ninth character tetz means wisdom. Snake or snake basket, right, can also mean wisdom. So that's why it doesn't tell you in your Bible, be gentle as a dove, right, but as wise as a serpent. So, and this is why there's the serpent that's the devil, right? And even in the wilderness, there was a serpent, wisdom, which actually represents the wisdom of the son of Yah, right? Who would come before us and he would be lifted up. And persons who looked upon his wisdom would have the poison of the wisdom of the world sucked out of them by simply focusing on proper wisdom, which Moses lifted above all others, right? And so the same thing it says in John chapter 3, before we get to verse 16, in John chapter 3, verse 14, it says the same way that Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, right? So Aaron laid down his rod, it became wisdom, it became a serpent, and they laid down their rods and it became wisdom, it became serpents, but his rod was able to outdo theirs. And you got to recognize, see, you got to be careful, because this is when you get into this place where persons will miss a lot of this, right? You'll get into this place where persons will miss a lot of this, where everybody will be out of order, and they'll go, oh man, this person can do something, or it seems like this is miraculous, or it seems like this teaching is something that makes me feel. And it's like, don't get caught up on the wisdom and where it came from. Who shall believe our report? Look, I'm not saying don't study, I'm not saying you can't. I'm just telling you, a lot of persons will keep look, let's keep it a buck. A lot of us want to be able to follow the Bible while following things against the Bible at the same time. I hope I'm not all over the place today too. Is what I'm saying making sense? I know we did a lot of flow, or it seems like, I promise you, we've been on task the whole time. But if I need to maybe slow it down or work backwards some, I will. But am I making sense? And what I'm saying in the presentation? Yes? Completely? Okay. I just want to make sure that's my assignment. If I'm not making sense, I'm not doing what we sit here for, okay? All right. So you gotta recognize, like, that wisdom is of Yah. And what we would like to do, what we like to stand on even, is we want to be everywhere. We want to be everywhere. Like, we want to be able, so watch this. We want to be able to follow what the Bible says, but then we also want to be able to talk about Isis and why we do what she says. But Isis is Ishtar. That's their version of Ishtar. Right? We want to say we follow the Bible, but we want to celebrate Easter. But Easter, the Bible is against Ishtar. We want to keep talking about Lilith. And Lilith in your Bible is somebody that you're told you're supposed to be against. And even Israelis, right, will tell you that that's something that they actually made up in their folklore, and you should have nothing to do with it. And they reject it. The ones that don't, basically Lilith to them is like Santa Claus to us, and we should reject it. There are many of you that are trying to say, I want to be in the Word, but I want to celebrate Christmas. But you're told in your Bible, Jeremiah chapter 10, verses 1 through 5, to be anti-Christmas. And if you're pro-Christmas, then you're anti-Christ. We want it both ways. We want to celebrate Thanksgiving. And look, I get that persons even think that Thanksgiving means to give thanks, even though Thanksgiving is actually a time of fasting. But that being said, if you're going to call Thanksgiving something that's there, don't look. Thanksgiving, we don't tell persons not to celebrate Thanksgiving because it's bad to give thanks. We tell persons not to celebrate Thanksgiving because they're lying to you about genocide. That means it's a sin. Come on, right? Like, that's why we saying don't celebrate Thanksgiving, is because they're trying to tell you that Squanto came in and was speaking English miraculously. When meanwhile, Tisquantum was enslaved and then had a slave mind and was a house Negro. And when they came back when they came back again looking for slaves after he had found a way to get back before them, he said, "Hey, I know what they're all going to do. You're going to try to enslave persons. Hey, let me be one of the house Negroes. Matter of fact, if you treat me real well and let me get a couple slaves, I'll make sure that y'all can enslave them easy." This is why we say don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Right? Watch this. We don't tell women, right? And I know somebody, you gonna tell a woman? I'm talking about with the authority of Yah. So yeah, I don't tell women, our women, because your women are not our women, right? And I'm not talking about just black. I'm talking about your women aren't our women as far as Israelites, as far as the belief. So I teach our women what Yah says. I have to tell them what Yah says, right? Whether that be Moses or Aaron, I got to represent. And so I tell them not to have abortions, not because they don't have free will, but because in the kingdom, your will should be in line with the will of the Father. You have free will to get the abortion that you want. You just have to go somewhere else to get it and stop calling yourself somebody who believes in the word. I agree with you that if your constitution allows for you to have your state let you go ahead and have that A word that rhymes with extortion, you should do what it says. Just realize, though, if you try to come to somebody who says they believe in this, and they try to tell you why that's all right, they're lying to you because they don't believe in this. This says that you can't murder your child. And I'm sorry, if the person was on, I know their question would be, well, if your daughter was forced to blah, blah, would you say that she had to have a child? I would say that she would do what the word of Yah says, because Yah knew that baby before she existed. And if you think that that makes me a monster, I'm monstrous. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be excited. It doesn't mean that I'm ready for her to do this. It doesn't mean that I'm going to just put her out there and be like, anybody who does anything like that's, you know what I'm saying? That's conflating weird stuff. The two are not congruent. And by the way, I wish somebody would. There's a reason, right? There's a reason why I got this little scar up on here, right? And I'm not going to show anything that's going to get me blocked, even though somebody will probably block me. And this is the smaller one, right? Well, this is the one that works as well, but this is actually the longer one. But I got something for somebody. This is the nice one, right? I got something for somebody if necessary. Like you ain't just coming to my family doing whatever because I have a belief. See, once again, this is why we got to get together as a community. With persons that are like-minded and persons that'll look out for each other's children. But just because I say that a woman shouldn't, you see how they do that in the world? They'll try to hit us with stuff. We got to represent. Like they're like, oh, so you're saying that if somebody walked up to your daughter, you would just, no, they're not just walking up to mine. At least not while she on my watch. Right? If I'm allowed to protect, I protect. Oh, you just gonna let somebody walk up to your wife? No, ain't nobody just walk up on my wife. You just gonna let anybody walk up on your son? Now, let somebody try. That's that old, what we used to, not I hope, I wish. Right? That old joke. It's true. Persons be like, I hope nobody died. I wish somebody would. I wish a mother would walk up on my child. I wish somebody would. I wish somebody would try to walk up on one of the children at SOC. This one we're going to get in trouble. They're going to get us locked up. I wish I was visiting. So we was all together and all the babies when we get together from time to time and, you got 10, 15 babies running around and all of a sudden there's somebody creeping or whatever, somebody try to grab one of these babies. I wish somebody would. Because if I end up in jail for that, and that's the end of the preaching for the rest of my life, right? I'll ask for forgiveness. What scripture? There's quite a few scriptures that say defend yourself. You're not a doormat. Even that scripture where it says be struck on one cheek. That scripture was that a person take that out of context, right? In Roman times, which is when Christ is talking about this, right? Greco-Roman times. So we're not sure if this is an Israelite custom, but we know in those times who were under at the time. If you were under somebody and somebody wanted to mistreat you, right, they could slap you. And slapping a man, right, is basically the only thing worse, probably spitting in his face. And I don't even know if it's worse. right? To slap a man, especially open hand slap. To punch, is different. We still don't want to be punched, but to punch a man different. To slap a man is different, right? So back in those times, right? If I'm facing you, and this is my right hand, right? I know it looks different because of the screen situation, but this is my right hand. Matter of fact, let me just go ahead and do this. It might look better for you. Let's say this is my right hand, right? If this is my right hand, right? If this is my right hand, then that means that this is your left side. So if I were to hit you with my right hand, right? Pow! Because that's what most person did, right? That's extremely disrespectful. If I come through and make connection with my right hand, I go pow, right? I've hit you on the weaker side of your chin, right, with my right hand, or of your mouth, right, because the right is considered to be the side of power. So I've hit you on the weaker side, and I hit you with my most powerful side. So it was disrespectful. If we were going to fight, that's how fights would start. If somebody really wanted to fight you and it was real bad, they were going to disrespect you, they'll pow, slap you. But if they had more respect for you, even though they still want to fight you, the custom was you come from this side, right? It's better to come from this side. Somebody think this is more disrespect. This is more disrespectful to hit like this in those times. So somebody would, I know backhand is nowadays considered big, but they would backhand you, pow, but they would hit you on your more powerful side, and they were saying, I respect you. And hopefully they weren't hitting you just outright as hard as they could. But if you go like this, it's kind of almost difficult not to. So you would hit somebody on that side, right? So if you struck somebody like this, what the custom was, somebody be like, oh, okay, we definitely gonna fight. I'm gonna take your life. That's crazy. You can do that to me in the street. But they would offer up the other cheek. They would say, yo, okay, hit me again. They would say, you better hit me right. It sounds weird to us now. It's not our custom, but I'm just saying. That's what they would say. They would say, basically, turn the other cheek. They would say, hit me correctly, and then we'll go at it, right? Go at it. So Christ, when he says, even though he's in the midst of saying, yeah, if they do this to you, blah, blah, but he said, even if somebody hits you, what he's saying is, even if they hit you disrespectfully, give them a chance to course correct. Now, we still might have to squabble, but give them a chance to course correct. That's the context, right? So when you go back and you look at how they struck persons back then, that's the context. You said you did 9 years in prison. He would be 75 today in Detroit because a guy slapped him in the bar. Yeah. Slapping a man is crazy. But back then, if you slapped him, it was known we're gonna fight. That's where you even later on, people who were more gentlemen. I hate that term because gentlemen are always racist. If you look up gentlemen in their past, now people just try to say gentlemen. Oh, gentlemen back in the day would have been the ones doing the most heinous things to your people while being called Gentile, right? But anyways, you would take the glove off, right? Now you take the glove off and or you take the glove off and you slap. But even still, there's a certain way. You don't just slap, or you don't just slap. Like you let them know how you slap depends on how disrespectful you're being. Right? Nowadays somebody just be like, man, I'm gonna F you up, I'm gonna F you up. But back then, I'm gonna F you up was boom, right? So if you turn the other cheek, you're saying no. Even if we got a squabble, you're not gonna treat me like with disrespect. And that's what we should, even amongst brothers. Anybody who grew up with brothers, right? If sisters grew up with sisters, brothers grew up with brothers, sometimes brothers and sisters do this too. If you grew up with siblings, right? But especially if you grew up with brothers or you grew up with cousins or anybody like that and you don't squabble from time to time, like, yeah, sometimes you got to squabble. Sometimes you got to fight. Sometimes, sometimes we got to get, we got to get it on. It is what it is. But once we finish fighting, we're going to go back to being brothers. But we shouldn't be disrespectful and all this stuff or whatever. We shouldn't be doing crazy stuff. We shouldn't be doing anything provoking each other to wrath. So that's more the context, right? So even that scripture within itself actually speaks of defending oneself. They better leave y'all's children alone for sure, right? And I get it. Yes, I talk about humanity, but I get what we're talking about in law. If we're talking about in court, Black's Law Dictionary, you don't want to be a human, because a human is a monster, right? But in all these different things that we're speaking on, we have to recognize that, like, we have to know this stuff. Like, whether we're Moses or Aaron, we have to be prepared to go to the next level. When we go before Pharaoh, when we put that rod out, right, you got to represent. And we don't have, at least many of us do not believe and do not think that we have a culture that allows us to represent, but we got to represent the Most High Yah. We must, right? In everything that we do, we have to. And that's the problem, is that we're not represented. Right? We're not representing him in everything that we do. In everything that we do. Ephesians 4:24, and that ye put on the new man, which after Elohim is created in right lawful standing and true holiness. Is that it? I'm not sure. That's Ephesians. Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong part. My bad. Galatians. Excuse me. Which things are an allegory? For these are the two covenants, the one from the Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Agag, right? So we've talked about this once again in Galatians in the great thing. So you can go and look up on our YouTube channel, just look up the series we did on Galatians, right? Because there's a lot that was in there that we had to go through, and even go through things in Galatians 1, 2, and 3 before we could even get 4. We had to realize the scriptures that were being quoted from Deuteronomy and Galatians chapters 3 and all those things, or whatever, to get context, right? Because a lot of persons use Galatians to be able to once again say Paul doesn't want us to follow the law. And we found pretty easily that once we went through the series, that's not what he's saying. I won't say very easily, but there's a lot of stuff that is there for you. That being said, this scripture just by itself is out of context, and I don't really know if I have the time, especially because I've used a lot of time to kind of meet a bunch of variables today. But yeah, basically, if we're speaking on Galatians chapter 4, we're speaking in Galatians period. So basically Galatians 1, Paul talks about how he came over to teach, how he actually knew the people, how he had gone through his own journey, how he was actually somebody who swore he was following the law. Remember, whenever Paul is talking about the law, he had to talk about the law of the spirit versus the law of the flesh. It's the same law, but if you put your flesh on it, it becomes the law of sin. But if you leave it the way it is, it's the law of the spirit in its origin, right? So that's always Paul's thing, and we never talk about that. Whenever Paul's talking about law, we got to talk about two laws, because he's talking about, are you putting your flesh on it and changing it, or are you leaving it be? So Paul believes in the law. If you don't believe that, look at Romans chapter 3 verses 1 through 4. Read Romans chapter 7 as a whole. Read who must be saved in Romans chapter 10 verses 1 through 16, and where he quotes it and who he's quoting. All right, those things are just right up top. That's surface level. So what Paul's doing in Galatians chapter 1 into 2, he starts talking about how he had to come to the truth, and even said that he had to meet up with James, John, and Peter to ensure that whatever he was preaching matched exactly what they were preaching to Israel. Because if he was preaching something different than what was being preached to Israel, he said then he said that he can't be preaching the truth. So when he had a meeting with them, I think he had Barnabas and Timotheus, or not Timothy, maybe Barnabas and I forget who the other person is I'm thinking of right now, but he brought those two and brought them with them, and actually they were trying to force them to get circumcised. One of them probably would have got circumcised with the way that they tried to force him, but Paul wasn't against circumcision either. He even talks about another scripture, how he had to circumcise Timothy. So Paul's not against the law. Even when he says circumcision of the heart is more important, which it is, doesn't mean that he's against the law. But he goes through all this process. He then even talks about the law in Galatians chapter 3 when he quotes, when he says, cursed is any man that hangeth from a tree. That's that's Deuteronomy chapter 21, or Deuteronomy 21 verses 22 and 23 or something like that. And then when he says the other one about anyone who goes against the law, they may they if they decide to go against the law, may they be cursed. He's quoting Deuteronomy chapter 27 verse 26 or something like that. And then if you know about that, then Deuteronomy 28 verse 1 is what starts next, that if you follow all the laws and observe to do them, then you'll get them, right? So Paul is attempting to tell, and once again in Galatians 3, he also tells those in the Galatians, like, hey, there was a time that if I had said anything,
you guys would have listened to me, and you guys would have went for it, and you guys would have done this. But now that I'm telling you to be more obedient and to be more strict in things, you don't want to hear me out. So this is what Paul is talking about in essence. So it's kind of difficult to talk about it without going through the in-depth things of it, right? So basically what persons will do is they'll say, well, he's saying that that's not the promise, but Abraham's promise, and therefore this and that, and these things don't matter. But if you read everything he's quoting the law. He's not saying the law doesn't matter. He's saying that don't be around. See, Paul's calling was to go out to those who were not Israel. He still dealt with those that were Israel as well. But he was his main places was being sent was to spread the message, and he actually preached to a lot of Israelites that were in other places as well as persons who were in Corinth, who were in Galatia, who were in all these different places. So when he preaches and teaches them, he's trying to teach them as persons who don't know any better at first, come on in. But ultimately his goal is to get them to be doing the same thing that's being preached to the Hebrews by James, by John, and by Peter. Right, which means to preach the same thing that Christ is preaching, who preached that we still have to go back to the law, which is to therefore do the same thing that David is speaking, and to do the same thing that Moses is speaking, right, and to do the same thing that Abraham is doing, and to do the same thing that Enoch is doing. So it's kind of difficult, but once again, if you get a chance to go look at the recording, it's recorded. We did all of Galatians. Matter of fact, we've done all of Ephesus too, which is the same author, speaking more so concerning love, but showing you Paul's heart. We've gone through Romans before, by the way, so you can look on there, go through the whole thing of Romans. Romans is the last thing that Paul wrote, and it's known as the Christology, the study of Christ, and basically how do we apply Christ to what we're doing as a nation, as others are being grafted in, to show how that works. So we have those things if you really like to go through. Right, and how you doing, Larry? Thanks for being part of the community. We do have Q&A this Thursday and Friday coming up, as long as everything works out. We should have this Thursday and Friday coming up. I believe it's Q&A, if I'm not mistaken. Or did we just do Q&A? We just did Q&A, didn't we? Okay, well, we got to come up in a couple weeks, something like that. How you doing, Moses TOC? Phenomenal. Thanks for being part of the community. Take out for the love again. Monty Cody. So going back to what we're talking about in Exodus, we have to get to a place where we recognize and we realize that that we are in fact supposed to represent, whether we be Moses, whether it be the leader, whether it be prophet. I am an Israelite by blood, not just because I'm blackity black. Literally, like my people, even through my really from my father's side as well, but even if you need like exact E1, B1A or L2, L3, L4, I have both. So I got it through my father and I have it through my mother's side. But on my mother's side, if you need the L2, L3, L4, sometimes it could be L5 or L1 and L0 in very rare cases. But my people, in what is known as modern Ghana today, the Ashanti Shwe, the Ashanti, we are recognized as, even by the modern Israeli, we're recognized as Bet Israel. So you have to, like, we're recognized. They won't give us what they say they owe us, but we're recognized as such. You said word is bond, the law is perfect, converting the soul. I'm with you. Right? So yeah, I consider myself Israelite, but once again, I consider myself Israel as nationality. I know there's certain things that come with color and stuff, but colorism is not necessarily something that drives my community. It shouldn't. There are some who say they're in my community, or some that I guess maybe you can say they're in the same community, whatever, that are driven by that. But colorism is not what I'm driven by. I don't make decisions based off of color. There are some that would challenge that, of course, and try to tell you why, because they don't like the fact that I've done something, and they'll tie stuff to color. But I mean, if you've been with us long enough, if you've been around long enough, I don't like to do the whole, I have white friends thing. But if you've been around us long enough, you know that that's not us. It's not us because it's not of Yah. Yahusha told you what, Apostle? I'm sorry, I missed it. Excuse me, y'all. Hold on. Now open this door up again. I think the sun's finally out of position where it's not going to overheat these devices. Now I need some air. Okay. Whew. Man, it's hot. Oh, you were bloodline? Okay. Well, either way, if you're born again, remember, being born again, what does that mean? Born again means that you're coming into a whole new situation as far as your nation. Right? That's all that means. So if you're born again, that means that you used to be part of one nation and you're born again to another, right? If you're Mexican, born nowadays, because y'all think you got to be born via birth certificate, how you doing, P.S. Jones? But if you're born Mexican and you decide to become American, once you transfer over, you're born again as an American citizen. So even with that, that's why the born again thing is important. That's why the graft in thing. Nobody ever talks about graft in and born again, but yeah, these are terms that are there. And persons are like, we just treat them like they're just random or they're just nice or whatever. No, like these terms are very specific because they're supposed to help us and encourage us in making sure the person's comprehend. You can become part of the nation. Hashtag we be the nation. But once again, we got to represent. And if we represent, see, this is when it becomes tough because a lot of cats be out there in that street corner. And I love your effort and energy, brothers. I really do. I love your effort and energy. I love your chutzpah, so to speak. I love your passion, even though it might be misplaced. But I love the passion that you really believe what you believe. Many of you do. The reality, though, is that many of us are out here talking trash and calling women B's and calling B's and H's and calling men the N-word and saying things that are just, if you don't want to say racist, fine, extremely bigoted. And you'll say, no, it's not bigoted. We the people that are. Here's something I want you guys to comprehend. Yah has never said that because somebody is a certain color, they're evil. He has said because they're part of a nation, they're evil. But that's because the nation does evil. And we don't represent, right? So, because I'm thinking about, we tried to figure out how to do this year, but it's just been too much going on. We're just too busy. Next year, maybe, but if I do it, it's going to be in the Baltimore area, the D.C. area, because next year, at least as of right now, you never know. I've said this several times that we end up traveling, but I really, probably next year, not going to travel as much. And if we are doing, I'm going to be, obviously, for Passover and Feast of Tabernacles next year, we'll be ready to go. But I'm just saying, if we do certain things, I need help. So the person's gonna put it together, and I'll make sure I help you out with all the leadership stuff you need, and to make sure we're doing it righteously. But real talk, we're gonna deal with the stuff or whatever. But with that being said, we're gonna make the stuff happen. I'm sorry, this heat's messing with me. Pray for me. Somebody was talking about oppression earlier. This heat is oppressive. It's been record heat on the East Coast. No matter where we've been on the East Coast, the last few days, it's always been a record-breaking heat thing. That's crazy. I've never done that. Where every single place I go is record-breaking heat. It's ridiculous. Can't escape it. How you doing, Mike? But anyways, anybody who's born again, right, you have to recognize we're saying that you're going from one nation to another. So if you are my brother or sister in the nation of Israel, in the nation of heaven, in the kingdom of heaven, you are not an American citizen anyways. You're just talking about some paperwork that when you're dealing with the world, but you're not an American citizen. You're not even a state citizen, really. You're doing the state citizen thing so you can do things on your own private time. On your private time, it's not in the public, so that doesn't even mean you're, right? If I do something in the private, it's un-American, by definition. Hosea chapter 4, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there about what we're talking about. But it's un-American. Cats got to recognize this. You know what I'm saying? It's un-American. And you don't get what I mean. I'm not saying it's not an American thing to have a bit. No, what I'm saying is, if I'm living privately, then what I do privately doesn't belong to the corporation of the United States. That means if I'm British, we got some Brits that come on from time to time, right? That means that I can't be British anymore if I'm in the kingdom. They still have to protect my rights, even in the private, because you have to protect those things that are natural. If you are natural, so you got to be careful. Some of y'all talking about natural born citizens and all this stuff. We don't know what these terms mean. But if I'm natural, if I have natural affection, it means I have affection that America doesn't like. That's why, see, you got to represent. My affection for my wife is not natural. My trying to make it to where when y'all see me at 100, my wife is sitting there next to me. Still, is not natural anymore. It really hasn't been for a minute. For me to say I'm going to be faithful to my wife and preach it but live it is not natural. See, I'm so right to the United States. So my natural person, in order to have a natural love, in order to have natural affection, I can't live by the standard of the United States. You follow me? So I have to leave it. I have to be separate. I can't love my brothers and my sisters without doing so outside of the norm. Right? This is why there's about to be a bunch of church services that are about to start. Right? If you're on the East Coast, they're about to start in 15 minutes. And we think that natural affection for Yah, although I believe you should dance, I believe you should get down, I believe you should boogie down on in your worship and all that, right? But you're going to see persons that do things that in the kingdom are not natural. You're going to see them wearing things today that are not natural. You're going to see them showing up in relationships that are not natural. I'm not just talking about, gay or lesbian or whatever, trans, blah, blah. No, I'm talking about you're about to see, well, right now we're in Georgia. We travel a lot. We have a lot of persons in different locations. What you're about to see today is you're going to see persons that are dating. And, according to the Bible, that's not natural. So the only way that you're going to be able to escape that is you got to be born again. You got to come out of that. Seriously, it's not natural. According to the Bible, it is not natural to date. And the only reason why you think that that's crazy is because you still are around a bunch of persons who do things that are, according to the Bible, that are unnatural. According to the Bible, you're not supposed to blaspheme against Holy Spirit. If Holy Spirit shows us something, and we say, right, if Holy Spirit shows you to follow the law, and you still say, I'm going to be lawless, that's not natural. It's just not. Follow what law? The word. Follow what your Messiah said. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 10 through 12, Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20, and Matthew chapter 7, verse 12, amongst other places. Follow what Paul said in Romans chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. Right? It's holistic. Everything, all the word has to go together, right? If it doesn't all go together. So I'm not saying that, by the way, the person turned this into, so are you saying grace isn't there and mercy's not there? Never said that. Well, the only way that we could follow the law is that we couldn't follow the law because Christ had to follow it. Yeah, but before Christ, when we followed the law, right, what did you do? Because Christ is the word is the law is the word, the law is Christ, right? My delight is inside of his law, and inside of his law doth I meditate both day and night, right? We like the scripture, but we don't want to live by it. But if we're going to speak on that, and I'm not just talking about Mosaic law, because y'all forget that in a kingdom, anything a king decrees is law. We forget that in a kingdom, anything a king decrees is what? Is law. What? In a kingdom? Can I say it one more again? In a kingdom, anything that a king decrees is law. So y'all only hung up on Mosaic law, forgetting there's other laws. forgetting that sacrifices existed before there was a law, forgetting that there were offerings that were given before there was a law, forgetting that there were prayers that were rendered before there was a law, forgetting that there were tithes that were given before there was law, forgetting that there were books of the Bible that existed before there was the Mosaic law. Right? How you doing, Lisa Riddle? Thank you for being on. Feel like long time no talk. I could be wrong about that, but thanks for being on. Thank y'all for the reposts and the likes and the shares and all that. Right? So we don't recognize kingdom. Here you are talking about a king. You can't be a king under the king because he's the king of kings. So how are you going to be king under the king, but you don't follow the law that allows you to be king? For you're only a man of authority because you're under authority. You're only a man of authority because you're a man under authority. You're only a woman of authority because you're under authority. Right? And persons are trying their best to get rid of things. Once again, we got to represent. And how you doing, divine spoken word, and thank y'all for the love. We got to represent. Once again, whether you be Moses in the equation or whether you be Aaron, whether you be the main guy, whether you be the person that's lifting up. And by the way, there really ain't no such thing as a minor or major prophet. There really is no such thing. Look, I might be the person whose face a lot of persons see, but they don't see the stuff that y'all do behind the scenes to make this stuff work. Right? And they don't see what you do for Yah. Now, once again, do it for Yah because he's going to be the one that judges. I can't catch everything. I'm not here to catch everything. Some things I'm given, the vision to see. Some things, I have to stand on this word because that's the only thing that I have that causes me to have the vision that I have so that we don't have division. We got to make sure we're preaching and teaching the same things. Shabbat Shalom, or last time Shalom CT, or if you're going, actually, hold on, where's my calendar at? Give me a second. I'm gonna make it short that I got my calendar right up front here as we've been traveling. See, I use the same thing that we've been telling y'all to use. Okay, so tomorrow will be Alex Kadesh Tamavaz. So tomorrow is the beginning of our new month. All praises. So if you're going by that means that, so if you're going by the regular 365 Gregorian Julian calendar, then you got your Shabbat going Friday into Saturday. If you are going by the Israelite calendar, your Shabbat goes into Sunday starting next Sunday. That means that for the next 4 Sundays, not including today, but the next 4 Sundays will be Shabbat. So next Sunday will be Shabbat Shalom, or you can treat Saturday and Sunday if you want to go for both at the same time. You can just do Saturday and Sunday can be your Shabbat. All praises. How you doing, TAAMP? And thanks for the repost. Thank y'all for the love. Right? But we got to represent. See, we don't have anybody represent. So these babies is out here only seeing Christianity. And I'm not trying to say that Christianity has can have no bearing on human existence or greatness that we can do. Right? But hear what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying. Hear me, beloved. Right? They don't see anybody representing us, representing kingdom, representing Yah. And with those who say they represent him, are constantly and consistently doing some stuff that's not representative of him, right? We can't have our brothers out there on the street corner cussing everybody out. How does that represent Yah? How do you think that that's going to get the remnant to come in to knowledge of who Yah is? How do you think that grows the nation? You calling all your women the B word that are out there and then telling them until they cover themselves from head to toe, some of them to where they can't even show their face, they can only show their eyes, right? And telling them that's what makes them righteous, and you don't have no scripture to back that up. You call that modesty. Meanwhile, the Bible talks about how your sisters, how your women, how your mamas, how your aunties, how your wives, how your daughters will be out there and have bracelets, or well, not bracelets, but have on ankle bracelets, right? What do they call anklets? I don't know what they call. Forgive me, but they'd have those on, and they'd be making music with them. It tells you that. Now, I'm not saying, therefore, that your women need to be out here in a 2-piece bathing suit all the time or something provocative. What I'm saying is that you think modesty is something, because in your mind, and I get it. We've been so hypersexualized that we're trying to do something to stop us from going through, but you're gonna have to figure out some kind of self-control. Out here saying that if a woman wears makeup at all, that means that she's not modest or she's not pure. The Bible never says she couldn't wear any makeup. It says that even when the term shamefaced, it means that in comparison to what was going on, in comparison to stuff like persons that are doing in Kemet or persons that were doing things in the Greeks or Rome or things like that, yeah, in comparison to them, yeah, keep it down. You don't have to be something to wear. Like even women would say sometimes some of the makeup, and I get it. I'm not here to shame anybody. It's not even my area of expertise because I'm not necessarily, where actually I don't think I've ever worn. Have I ever worn? Even for stage stuff, I don't think even on stage when I've done plays, I don't think I've ever worn makeup before. Any kind of makeup. Don't want to. Have no desire, don't lack it, have no desire. But I'm just saying, right? It's saying in comparison to what those persons were doing, right? But in comparison to what they were doing, yeah, have some decorum. There are some, and by the way, let's also talk about this. Why is it that you're supposed to be modest? How you doing, Baron? What is the reason why it's saying? So y'all try to use the thing of modesty as far as to control and manipulate. Why does it even tell a woman to be modest? What's the reason? What's the reason why it tells a woman to be modest? See, we don't even think about that. We just be modest. Cover yourself up. Why are you? What is your modesty for? By the way, men should be modest as well too. Sitting up there wearing tight pants and wearing gray sweats and trying to go to the gym and show yourself off and make sure that you're going online. Y'all be. Forgive my language. Forgive my language. I'm Akut Devarach, and if there's anybody, big double OG, triple OG, right? Any of my elders, forgive my language. I'm about to use bad language, right? And I didn't ask permission, right? The elders, you go to them for certain things you do. But hear what I'm saying, for protection. But watch it. Men be out here thotting it up more than some of the women do. Look at these brothers IG talking about what they did at the gym. Taking all these steroids, 22-year-olds looking like they 45 now. They out here thotting it up more than, that's the term y'all be using. I'm gonna use what y'all say. They be from the streets more than anybody else. Talking about these sisters out here. Elder Alman and I was watching something, I put it on. Watching something, one of them shows that they be showing all this drama and stuff in the relationship. And it might have been the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. And while Sister Girl was crazy, the guy she was cheating with was crazier. And nobody telling him to be modest. Nobody telling him to keep it together, but you want modesty, but modesty starts with us, brothers. We need to make sure, pull your pants up before you telling her, do that, right? You got your whole behind showing up, and by the way, you getting that from San Quentin, where if you were in San Quentin, now they do it everywhere, but you would, somebody would have to walk around holding your pocket or with their hand in your pocket, right? Or they would have to walk around with their stuff sagging because that meant you belong to another man. See, that's modesty too. Tell your boys to make sure that they ain't showing their behind. I be frying up brothers, little boys in our community when they be showing they behind, whether it's on purpose or not. I be frying them up. They need to know. Hey, pull them up, bro. We gonna make fun. We over here, right? They gonna get the message when they're young. They gonna get the message. We ain't got time for that. That's modesty as well. But yes, modesty is for protection, right? Modesty is also, watch this. Modesty is for protection. Modesty is also because not everybody, on both sides, not everybody needs to see what belongs to your spouse. There's certain things that don't belong to anybody but Yah and your spouse. And even with Yah. If it's done correctly, Yah said whatever y'all do in the bedroom is undefiled. If what you're doing in there is holy, that's your business. There's a time and a place for everything. But modesty is there, and therefore, as Elder Alma was saying, yeah, it's for protection. Especially with a lot of these, unfortunately, if we be honest about a lot of these Negroes and others out here too, who are trying, also, if I might say this as well, forgive me, I'm getting older, so I be using stuff out of context sometimes, but I believe I'm using this right. Like, persons are falling for thirst traps or trying to become thirst traps. Y'all get what I mean when I say thirst trap? I think I'm using that correctly, right? I don't usually use that term. But cats is out here thirsty for what they lusting for, let's say, right? Male or female. And so, you know, a lot of catfishing, a lot of things where persons are trying to get you out of what Yah has for you in a thirst trap. The devil wants you to be in a thirst trap. They're trying to get you in all these weird things or whatever, and we're ending up in bad relationships and bad things that are happening because persons are thirsting, hungering, and thirsting for righteousness. In the kingdom, you should be looking for a husband. In the kingdom, you should be looking for a wife. If you hunger and thirst for righteousness, you shall be filled. See, we got to represent. See, this is why. As a salesman, if you will, for the kingdom, as a salesman for marriage, I keep trying to sell you on the idea of marriage, not dating, marriage, not boyfriend, husband, not girlfriend, wife, right? I'm really in. How you doing, Sister Tina? I'm really trying to sell you on the thought process of marriage because marriage is biblical. Dating is not. But whether you be Moses or Aaron in the equation, nobody, you got to represent. Nobody's representing marriage. So this is why I'm making it a big point to say, yeah, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. It's not because I'm a simp. It's because marriage in the kingdom is more advanced than what y'all are trying to make simplistic. You're actually the simps. You're trying to make this thing simple as far as it doesn't matter what we do. That's as simple as it gets. There's no rules. There's no regulations. There's no character development. There's no accountability. There's no sexual discipline. There's no verbal discipline. Shalom, Sister Melissa. You said that's why you wear a head covering to conceal beauty for your husband, and the Bible, and some persons take that as that scripture can be used as both. Covering the head can be covering the husband in prayer, or covering your head can be covering your head because you want to make sure. And by the way, that's cultural, right? You know, there's different ways. We haven't really. I don't know how to teach that stuff. I've never done it. I guess maybe I can learn it and try. I'd feel weird teaching it if I even learned how to do it, and I'd feel weird trying to do it because it's not something I as a man is supposed to really do. But that being said, like, yeah, you know, there's head coverings. If you go to certain cultures, you go to certain places around the world, they know if you're married or not. They know how long you've been married. They know if you're royalty. They know all this stuff just by how you wrap your hair. That's normalcy in the kingdom of heaven. Right? It's just normal. There's some sisters that don't cover their head when they preach because they want you to know they're married to Yah, or they want you to know they're married and that their husband is their head, even if they're the pastor or the preacher or the presiding prelate or whatever. That's not necessarily the thing we do here. I'm just saying to each their own. But I'm just saying we got to represent. See, and somebody would make you try to feel bad because you're modest. And I'm sorry, babe. Thank you for the love. Persons would try to make us feel bad because we promote modesty. But always, but it's cultural. I tell you what, you go other places, you do some traveling, you'll discover in places, you know, where things like modesty are upheld. Even the way that their children are treated is better, right? You said, can we as Hebrews today have more than one wife according to the New Covenant? We were never really even supposed to have it back then. Every time that you see it mentioned, every time you see it mentioned in Scripture, even back in the so-called Old Testament, or Old Covenant, if you will, even way back then, everything that we see, every time somebody does something with multiple wives, it's always like a bad situation. Even persons will bring up Abraham. Abraham never even had two wives, right? And it was Sarah who suggested to Abraham that he have the wife. But Abraham, once again, let's hold him accountable. Abraham, who also was afraid and was going to end up being, forgive my language, was going to end up being a cuck because he was afraid. He had made a deal with his wife that she would lie and say she was his sister so that he wouldn't get killed. Not just trusting that Yah would make sure he protected him. Then Yah protected him anyways, right? So Abraham had some issues in that department, right? Fair is fair. We got some stuff in us, in our family, that we got to talk about. And we got to say, hey, when we recognize any of it, let's call it out. But every time, like with Abraham, Yah told Abraham and Sarah, that was never what I told you to do, right? I had told you how this was going to work. You guys brought somebody extra in. And now we're dealing with Ishmael versus Isaac to this day. You know, if you go with Israel, you know, Jacob, Jacob, he is sent to get one wife, right? He was sent back to the home of Abraham, right, to ancient Syria, right, to get one wife. He goes back and he worked and got himself drunk, so he sins, right? He sins so much he can't even recognize who his wife is. Probably there's no recollection of anything that happened, just dead drunk, right? And he becomes one with Leah. Wakes up, is like, what is this y'all did to me? He's tricked by all the parties, by the way. He's guilty, but he's tricked by Leah, he's tricked by Rachel, and he's tricked by Laban, right? But he's tricked. He still wants Rachel. So he's like, okay, Laban's not going to let me divorce her, so I'll take her on, but I'll also take on Rachel. Wasn't righteous. And then later on, out of the fight that Rachel and Leah are having, they start getting maids in on it too. And by the way, this whole thing of people being like, they were their slaves. No, they actually had choice. But hey, if I can come up and be one of the children of the master, right, even if they're not going to be mine, it means that I get to go up in status. So they did this thing for status symbols. So you got us falling into temptation and doing the same stuff, right, because we just can't say no. Don't forget about even Esau decided to get multiple wives and then went to marry into Ishmael's family and went to Kemet, where Ishmael was, right? So that was one of the reasons why Jacob was sent by Rebecca. She was like, I think he's going to end up being like Ishmael if we don't send him, because there's some lust stuff going on, and we need Jacob to marry somebody that's from our home, from our people, who recognize marriage and do what we do as a community, as a family. You know, you go on later on to Samuel's mother. You know, she was the second of two wives, and you know, it wasn't working out well for her. She wasn't being recognized the way that she wanted to be. You know, it was, and later on we have Christ come back, and Christ tells us that, as we had said earlier, I don't know if you were on it with us at that time, but Christ made it the point to say the only reason why there was even divorce or any kind of multiple marriage is because Yah saw the hardness of your hearts. But he said it was always supposed to be one wife. And so now when we get into Paul and all that, Paul is talking about one wife, husband of one wife. You know, so most of the, you know, David is in lust. He has all these wives or whatever. Now, once again, Yah honors his covenant because Christ has to come through, right? But ultimately, even Bathsheba, if you recall, when you look at Matthew chapter 1 and when you look at Luke chapter 3, it never says David and his wife gave birth to Solomon. It says David got with Uriah's wife and gave birth to Solomon. Yah worked out all things, but he still says, hey, I want y'all to know that I didn't approve that, but I worked it out. Because David's heart, he asked for forgiveness, he repented, and so that's still David's seed, but that's really not even his wife. That's what he says even in scripture. That's not really his wife. Although it would be that seed that would be on the throne. He honored the covenant that David made with Bathsheba, but he said, hey, that's not even my will. So we never were supposed to have that. How you doing, Lady Jane? You said Abraham and Israel had more than one wife and their descendants were blessed. Sure, but are we going to act like everything that happened with them was perfect? They're not perfect, just as far as. But first of all, like here's the thing. Once again, we're going to do this. We're going to do this properly. Just because somebody does something in Scripture doesn't mean it was Yah's will. And if Yah does something right, and if Yah says, "Well, I'll work it together," it doesn't mean He's working it together for Tabah because what you did is Tabah, or working it together for good because what you did is good. He's working it together because of His covenant and person's repentance. Right? So we're not going to pretend that Yah is like, oh, okay, Abraham, because once again, Abraham didn't have more than one wife. He had more than one sexual partner. And how did that operate? And by the way, when Abraham came on behalf of a sexual partner, right, Hagar, and said, hey, Sarah, my wife, who told me it was okay to be with Hagar, doesn't want Hagar or Ishmael here, what would you like me to do? Yah said, you listen to your wife, because the wife is more important than the side piece. So we still talking, you see what I'm saying? So Yah still corrected it, or still did things to correct it. So yeah, you know, you can say like, oh yeah, well, look at what Judah did. Judah ends up kind of, you know, messing up his bloodline, because what should have been his sons becomes like another son that really should have been like his grandson. So it wasn't quite, you know, as nasty as it could have been, but it got pretty nasty. But it was because he didn't do what he was supposed to, and because his sons wouldn't do what they were supposed to. And so now, basically, the Most High says, hey, the lineage still has to go from Judah to Yehoshaphat. So I'm gonna make it work, right? And I'm gonna do things in order. And by the way, we keep doing this stuff because of David and because of Solomon's like infidelity, because of their idol worship, because of them having multiple wives, because of them not making sure they were only married into Israel. Do we not see that Yah even tells Solomon that, hey, I will not allow this stuff to happen to you because I respect David. That being said, though, know that everybody after you coming up in your bloodline is about to have issues. A lot of that having to do with what? Sexual promiscuity. We can try to make excuses for it, but so we got to be careful with that. Where we're like, well, David, what happened with David and Absalom again? Like there was some stuff David had to go through. What happened with David and Bathsheba's first child? You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to be careful in some of that, right? It doesn't mean that Yah cannot forgive. It doesn't mean that Yah cannot still make it work out. But yeah, there's some stuff that they had to go through. Yah wasn't just pleased. Solomon's bloodline had to go through some stuff. He told them they would. He wasn't just like, oh yeah, cool, have as many wives as you want, and they can believe whatever they want, and they should just all no. He was like, there's gonna be a penalty that's gonna be paid. And if you don't think, I know brothers, see this is, look, brothers be on some stuff. If you don't think, brothers, hear me on this. If you do not believe that Israel trying to be with one woman that he really wanted to be with Rachel, and then capitulating to what Rachel said, or even to what Leah said, or to what all the wives are trying to do, even though two of them weren't even considered to be wives, right? And having to go through all this and then having children that were from different wives, and which ones were this and which ones were that, and he really didn't want to be with Leah, but Leah technically had 8 children, right, or 9, or at least you got to say she had 7, because 7 came from her womb, but one of them, the other 2 came from her handmaiden, and then there were 2 that were of the handmaiden that Leah had, and Leah's the one he really wants to be with, and he wish she would be pregnant, but Yah isn't allowing her to be pregnant, be shut up her womb because she's sitting up there trying to do this, that, whatever. I mean, if you think that stuff was like Israel was pleased and that made life easy for her, I mean, to each their own. But I would tell you that there were probably a lot of issues, and once again, look at all the issues that came through his bloodline because of what happened. There's a lot of stuff. So brothers be acting, a lot, and it's kind of a red pill mentality. I'm not saying you in particular. I'm just saying there's kind of a red pill mentality that cats be out here thinking that they can have and should be acting and think that, like, whoever their main squeeze is, or their main wife, or their one wife. And brothers want this 7-to-1 thing so bad because they're forgetting that if there's going to be that 7-to-1 thing, it means we got to be cursed. So you want our people to be so cursed that there's only one man for 7 women. And if there's one man for 7 women, it means that we're cursed. We're in a bad situation. We've been unbelievers. We've been unfaithful. We've been unrighteous. And it's 11:11, babe. Thank you, Sister Mignon. Right? We've been out of pocket. We've been out of order. That's what y'all want. Is that what we're looking for? Seriously, is that what we desire? That we be so messed up that women that women, if they're gonna get with us, they're just gonna start to allow us to have, because that's what a lot of women are doing now, because they're trying so hard. Now this is something that's happening in the black community. Can we go there? Can we go there? Once again, somebody got to represent. Somebody got to stop and say this stuff is messed up. Nobody should be sent. Nobody's sending. Y'all's not sending us to keep preaching foolishness. Let's go here. In the so-called black community, in our community today, a lot of black women, right, because they're being told that they shouldn't be going to the white man or to the Asian man or to the Spanish man or to whatever man, right, and that they're being traitors and this and that or whatever. Not only are they supposed to be mistreated by us, but they're saying, hey, go ahead, not only mistreat us, but hey, I get it. You as a man, you can't have the ability to have sexual self-control or sexual temperance. So since you can't be disciplined sexually, they're saying, well, we'll just go ahead and let you have 2, 3, 4, 5. Because the black man needs to come together, and we need to make a nation, and we need to replenish it. We need, no. Well, even in the Hebrew community doing it. Fair point. But I'm just saying, right? It's a thing that's so-called, right? And I like a lot of stuff. I forget her name, Shahrazad Ali. I might be saying her first name wrong, but I like a lot of stuff she has to say, but she'll be quick, you know, because she's speaking and women are hearing her when she's saying like, yeah, you know, our men don't feel appreciated. They feel underappreciated. They feel unheard. They feel like the world is biased against them. They feel like they have to always say that everybody gets it worse than them. They feel like they can't, you know, be home and cry. They can't be weak or whatever's considered to be weak. How you doing, Brother Cole? Right? Yeah, I was just thinking about you the other day. Praise God. All praises. I was literally thinking to myself, man, I haven't seen my brother in a minute. But they think all these different things, and and it's great. But then she'll be the same person to be like, yeah, so we need to have multiple wives. But that's because she follows Elijah Muhammad, who was cheating on his wife with underage girls. He was, right, and she needs him to be perfect because he's a god to them. Might as well be. They say he's just a messenger, this and that, but you know they believe that Allah is a man. If you don't know, for them Allah is they don't even do Ramadan in the same time you guys do. If you're a Muslim or have ever been a Muslim, they don't even do Ramadan when you guys do it. They believe that Allah is a man. Elijah Muhammad believes that W.F. Muhammad is the son of man, and he knew him personally. And then he believed, not returned, he just believes he's the son of man. And he believes that the son of man had a father, right? And his father, I keep forgetting which Polynesian, I think Polynesian island he's from, but his father was supposed to be black, and his mother was supposed to be white. And that was supposed to show that Allah is the man, Allah, right? Just a couple generations before, was so strong that he could keep the white that's what they say, the white devil in submission. That's what they believe, right? So Shahrazad Ali, but she says a lot of great stuff. She's trying her best to change even what they believe, right? Because they need Elijah Muhammad to be like Muhammad, who had 13 wives, or 15, 16, whatever. But, you know, it was okay, and had underage wives and all that, but they say it's all right. That's what they needed to be. That is what they needed to be. Right? And so so she'll change the stuff, but it's like it's becoming so invasive, and all these men are trying to say, yeah, and then you have people who hate. And here's another one. Stop listening to black dudes. Forgive me. I'm just gonna say it like this. Stop listening to black dudes that hate black dudes, or Northern Africans, because they don't consider themselves to be black. You know, Northern Africans who hate black dudes. Stop listening to Myron, if you know who I'm talking about from Fresh and Fit, who's sitting up there telling you that you need to sleep with at least, what I thought, is it 50 or 500? It might be something crazy, like you need to sleep with 500 women, which is like almost impossible, right? Like if somebody does that, I mean, I wouldn't say kudos. I wouldn't say, well, like if you do that, you very unclean for the rest of your life, right? But whether it's 50 or 500, and all these people saying, yeah, you got to sleep with all these women, and then this and that, right? But he hates your women. And if you're a black woman that he says is worthy to be in his presence, but he said he's done with black women anyways. Him and is he fit? Yeah, so him and Fresh. A Haitian guy, once again hating his own women. He got too much of the Dominican side in him. Forgive me. If you know, it might be a poor joke, but if you get what I mean, you know why I said it that way, right? If you get Dominican, Haitian, they're really the same people who don't want to, the Dominicans don't want to be recognized as Haitian, right? I know Black Poppy, right? That's you know that's where that stuff comes from, right? How you doing, Javon? You said every shade of color, man, is not. That's DNA wise. Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, stop listening to these jokers out here when they telling you a lot of them hate their own women. I'm not saying that you can't get married to somebody who you love. What I'm saying though is if you're a so-called black man and you marry a so-called white woman simply because she's white, then you've done her a disservice, you've done yourself a disservice. If you marry a so-called white man just simply because he's white, something wrong with you. That's what I'm saying. If you marry a black man, the reason is because he black, it's fetishized, Something wrong with you, right? I'd say that. I don't think racism is a mental disorder. People be saying that racism is not a mental disorder because racism is a system somebody put together on purpose. You don't put together a system on purpose because you're crazy. I mean, you could be crazy putting together a system, but you don't put it together because you're crazy. Not something that works like racism, right? But you can be crazy enough to believe that you need to uphold the system because somebody's better than you because of the color of their skin, or they'll make you better because of the color of your skin. I'm not here once again to tell you, once again, you love who you love. I'm not here to tell you you can't love somebody because they're a different color. I'm here to tell you if you love somebody simply because they're a different color, something wrong with you. Yeah, well, in our culture, you should only be marrying somebody who's in the kingdom. So once again, that's why we don't believe in dating, because in the kingdom, you don't date. You find somebody who's in the kingdom, and if you two are compatible, right? And I know somebody doesn't like that because we're very romantic. Compatible? No, his sun needs to be my moon, and my sign needs to go with his sign. And a Taurus can't be with a Libra, and no, that's you know what I'm saying? That's no. I'm not saying like it's got to be dead. Yes, we got to make sure that we do things that are valuable, and we got to do things that show the person that we care, and we should have natural affection for another. And some of y'all are out here believing that you just need to be with somebody that makes you feel great, but then all of a sudden, look, after you date them a while, but definitely after you marry them a while, you're going to disagree. And if you think that the first time, I've seen this happen where persons have had fights because they had their first argument. And they start packing their stuff up because they have their first argument. If you're not ready for the argument, you're not. This thing goes deeper than that. Yeah, I feel you, Minister Keita. I feel there are things that persons have in common if they're born around the same time, because you're gonna have certain things that are just done around those time of years. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. The Bible is with you on that. You said your husband, you got married 12 days after meeting. It's been 15 years. Yeah, and I mean, you could. Yeah, I mean, with myself, Elder Ahmed, I knew pretty quickly. This whole thing of you gotta wait. We don't believe you gotta wait either. You just gotta be a husband and a wife. You gotta be trained. You gotta know what it is, right? But we got to represent, whether it be Moses or Aaron in the equation, we got to represent. Persons don't believe that can happen because we don't have persons representing that. We don't have persons representing, we didn't have to have sex all day, every day. And then figure out later on, well, I guess we've got children, we got this, we might as well get married. Forgive me for 1 second. Uh-oh. Must be because it's hot. All right. Well, anyways, all praises. Sorry. Excuse me, TikTok. Can y'all see and hear me? Yes, no, maybe so? You guys should be fine. I think the device starting to get too hot. But we almost at time anyways. How you doing, Good News? So we got to get to a place where we represent kingdom. All right, we rep kingdom. That's what we do. In everything. In how many things? In everything. In everything. Every single word reps kingdom. Right? Every single word. See, this is the problem. Everything. Right? Including how does one get married? How does one get married? You see? Once again, even in that, how does one get married? If we don't know, we don't know. But how does one get married? There's actually a way to get married. And it's not walking down the aisle. And a lot of us, including myself, because we didn't know any better, we had other things that were kind of implied and stuff like that there, but You know, a lot of persons, we still doing this, and I'm not saying you can't walk down the aisle, but I'm saying we have no representation even of what the kingdom says. Right? How is it that the community is, because the whole community is supposed to be involved in the marriage? It's not just husband and wife getting married, there's families getting married. And we all family, and the nation's getting married. Right? How do we make sure we take care of children? Before, right? How do we even, when we say a man is supposed to take care of his wife, that man's supposed to be given an inheritance, and he's supposed to be in his work, and then his finds his wife in his work. That happened from Adam on. Think about that. We're not even disciplined enough. See, Solomon, if we do this correctly, we're coming out of some things, so we might not be able to do it as well as I'd like to. But if we do this correctly, when Solomon finds a wife, and his wife goes to her parents, and he comes to us, and we meet with their parents, he should have already been given an inheritance. He should already know what he's going to be working in. He should already know the culture. He should already be trained in kingdom. He should already have gone through a bar mitzvah, or bar mitzvah is real. That's a real thing. He should have already had the community looking out for him. He should have been trained and qualified as far as kingdom to be a man by a board. He should be qualified as kingdom to be a husband by a board. He should be qualified to be a father by a board. And when he finds his wife, he should be prepared to come, and wherever we live as his mother and father, he should be ready for us to look over him building an attachment. That's what a mansion is, an attachment, an add-on to the house. He should be looking for an add-on to our house, as long as everybody agrees, the husband, the wife, or the husband and wife to be, and the parents agree. We should all be in agreement. We should be able to give them a dowry, something to show them like, hey, your daughter is valuable to us. They should therefore be able to raise in status because of her being married, right? The community should get better because of this. He should be able to build something for her. And then once I sit there and I look at Elder Alma and I say, hey, babe, I think that he's ready to go back and get our daughter and bring her in here, right? Then he's going to be sent back, and then the whole community is going to get excited, and we're going to set aside a place that we're going to have the ceremony, and then after the ceremony we're going to have a feast, and during the feast, well, maybe we won't do it exactly like that because some of y'all couldn't handle that, right? But at some point around the feast, the two will become one, and when they both lose their virginity, which we're going to work diligently to make sure that both sides keep, then when they lose it together, then they will already be on paperwork in private, because we're going to do it privately. They'll already have paperwork together saying that they are on their way to becoming married. But once they're one, they will make that paperwork, we're going to write in there that once they're one, that paperwork will be done. It'll be ready to be signed all the way, 100%, right? And then once that's done, then she's going to come into our home. And our family is going to be responsible. Her family too, but our family is going to be extremely responsible for making sure that everything they need in their first couple of years, as far as help with them babies, they're going to be taken care of. And then we're going to say, okay, now y'all go back and live in your own land. You got it together, and keep on making that money, sir, and keep on doing this, and keep on having that oil in your lamp, daughter, right? But we're going to work together as a community. We don't even think like that. Some of y'all trying to get time off on Tuesday so you can make sure you can get married and show back up for work on Wednesday. And parents aren't involved in raising your babies, or none of that. Not just spoiling your babies, but raising them, making sure that, hey, when a woman has a baby, she should do nothing but recover. Come on, somebody. I ain't doing minutes around. When that wife has a baby, she should be able to recover. We should somebody got to rep this. See, at some point, somebody's going to have to do this. And not just do it once, but we're going to have to do it where they can do it consistently. She shouldn't have to get all types of drugs and needles thrown into her spine, and the baby's getting them things too. But she should be able to have a natural birth and squat down and let what we call gravity take its place. Because the natural position for a woman when she's giving birth is not to go on her back, but to squat. And that baby should be able to eat, even when she's having the baby for the first time and she can't provide the milk, right? The colostrum, when it comes out, should be part of the process to get the breast going, right? The bosom going, to get everything inside going, the mammary glands going, while simultaneously the baby is still attached to what feeds the baby. We don't cut that off. You see what I'm saying? But somebody's got to do this enough. We got to represent it enough. We got to protect. We got to think that protecting women is enough. So where women shouldn't be getting messed up after having their first child because they doing all types of unmentionable stuff, or they're cutting, or they're doing episiotomies and this and that. Look, I'm not saying every once in a while you don't need help, but there's a lot of time. You know, y'all made these things fearfully and wonderfully made. You know, there's sisters who have caught babies coming out of them. You know what I'm saying? Like having a baby in water is not a difficult assignment nowadays. We could go and get an inflatable pool for that like, a person can stand and sit in, and she could be in a comfortable position, right? As comfortable as she can be with pain, but be in a comfortable position where she could squat down, give birth to a baby, comes out through the water. When the baby comes out the water, the baby will automatically not breathe. If you take a newborn baby and you throw them in the water, this happened to me this is my first memory as a child, is if you take a newborn baby to the YMCA and you put them in the water, the baby will instantly open its eyes underwater, and the baby will instantly hold its breath. She can have a baby in water and that baby come out and be fine. And by the way, when the baby's had in water and stuff, it'll be part, especially make sure that the water is cleansed and everything, it can be part of the cleansing process. It makes it easier on her as well. By the way, it takes off some of the weight of her, right? You know that the baby she's carrying has weight. So when you're in the water, right? Sisters, you tell me if I'm wrong. I haven't carried a baby, but I'm just making an assumption. You know what they say about persons that make assumptions. But if I may, is it not take off a little bit of weight and pressure off you when you're in the pool, when you're pregnant? Right? I mean, it just makes sense. I'm lighter in the water than I am on the plate, right? There's exercises I can do in the water that I can't yet do, just walking around yet, because I need to get a little bit of this gut off, right? It takes a little bit of the pressure, but I'm just saying, somebody has to represent. The same for the kingdom. Somebody got to represent, and what I'm saying is all kingdom. It's all how we're supposed to be living. But we gotta somebody has to represent, whether it be Moses or Aaron in the equation. Somebody has to be able to give this report, right? When we start giving this report worldwide, it's last verse for today. I know my time is technically up in like a few seconds, but last verse for today, and then I'm done for real. Let's go to Matthew chapter 24, verses 13 and 14. We're going to focus on verse 14, but Matthew chapter 24, verses 13 and 14. This is our Messiah speaking, by the way. Whether your Bible has it written and read or not, this is our Messiah speaking. Matthew chapter 24, verses 13 and 14. Once you have it, let me know. Last verse for today. Right? This is how important your representation is. If you were going to exit, including even exiting this earth, this is how important your representation is. Right? If we can get this going on a regular, I'm telling you, to be in his will, and I'm telling you right now, I'm in a kingdom marriage. There ain't nothing better than a kingdom marriage. I don't care who tries to mess it up. I don't care what things happen. I don't care even if we have arguments from time to time. There ain't nothing better than the kingdom marriage. I've been in a marriage to where we've been churchy, and I won't give you all the detail because I'm not here to shame anybody up, but I'm telling you, I've been in a marriage where that thing ain't right. I wasn't right either. I'm not going to do that with the other person. I'm just saying, I've been in a marriage where I preach goosebumps on persons, and people say amen, and I can whoop and holler, and I can do it with the organ, without the organ. I can have people come in. People want me to be the pastor and ask me to be pastor of their church because I can preach. And I've been part of the thing to where I'm like, man, I can't make this work at home. I'm in a kingdom marriage now. It's different. It's built different. Right? You want a marriage built on righteousness, it's built different. You got to be ready to be transformed. See, some of you trying to continue to be conformed, but you got to be transformed. You got to be rebuilt. You got to be reborn. See, this marriage I'm in now is built different. I've seen some marriages. I be talking to couples, and I still to this day quite often, and I be talking to couples, and I be seeing stuff, and I'm telling you, I know what it is to see some things that people are perpetrating and acting one way in front of persons, and then won't even admit it. I know that there's I won't go into all that, but I'm just saying, I'm in a kingdom marriage. It's built different, from the ground up, from the rooter to the tutor, from the crown of our heads to the soles of our feet. It's a different thing. It's beautiful. But anyway, Matthew chapter I'm on. Now, Matthew chapter 24, verse 13 and 14. And then I'm done. Y'all have a great day. I don't think I'm even in a position to do the shout out. So, love y'all much. Thank you for being on. Pray for us. We're going to be staying in the same place for a little bit, but we're going to be on the road. So, your continued prayers and continued help even are much appreciated. Right? Okay. And by the way, VBS starts tomorrow. Everybody be ready. VBS starts tomorrow. So Zoom information, all that stuff is going to be up and ready for you guys. And we're going to be doing it throughout the whole week. So starting tomorrow, VBS, I'm sorry, every Rising will be a live session. Every evening will be VBS. 6 p.m. on Zoom will be for the babies. 7 p.m. on Zoom will be for the adults. 8 p.m. will be when all of us come back together. All right? That'll be all week. So no evening sessions this week coming up. It'll be all week, VBS in the evenings on Zoom. If you want more information, just holler at us, let us know. The link will be put out via email, and I'll try to put it out on DMs. They don't let me do too many DMs. You put too many of them, they start stopping you. But I'll try to put it in different places. If you can text me your information, I'll try to text it to you. If you want to invite anybody, whoever you like, invite them. Just make sure they recognize what they about to get into if they don't know. All right? So you'll have to be the one, if you don't mind, to reach out to me. I got a lot of stuff going on to try and make it work, and teachings that got to happen, and making sure everybody's gonna be in place and stuff. But if you text me, I promise you, I will make sure I go through my phone 3 times in between the live sessions and VBS to make sure that I get as much information on persons, and they will be recorded. But obviously, being there in person is probably different than getting the recorded message, right? Okay. All right. Thank you, Brother Yachasef. And if the babies are watching, I don't know if Veda's around, or if I knew I was gonna forget the other day. No. Charlie. If Charlie or Veda are around, all praise to the Most High for them being involved in your life and being involved in ours as well. All right. And thank you for all that you do, Sister Mignon. Matthew 24, verse 13. Where we're gonna start, verses 13 and 14. Matthew chapter 24, verses 13 and 14. All right? It reads like as follows. So it says, but he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. So we talking about somebody being saved, you have to do what? Endure. You got to run your race. You got to run your course. You have to endure. Paul says, I have run my race. I've run my course. He didn't just say there's a crown waiting on me. He said there's a crown waiting on me because I've already ran the course. I got to endure. The race is not given to the swift, right? It's not given to the most powerful. It's not given to the fastest. It's not given to the one who has the best form. It's given to the one that can cross the finish line. Christ already finished the race. So anybody who's on his team already gets a crown. It's already guaranteed. He won the race perfectly. So all you have to do is complete it. All right, here we go. Okay? So if you can endure, you shall be saved. Verse 14. And this interpretation of his word is used to evangelize. It's not gospel, it's not Godspell. Remember, every time you say that word gospel, just think evangelize, what's used to evangelize. So, and this interpretation of the kingdom, right? This proper interpretation of what we use to evangelize of the kingdom shall be preached, shall be proclaimed where? In all the system, in all the world, for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So did you know that your Bible told you? We don't know the date or the hour, which is also a marital scripture as well. But we don't know the date or the hour, true. But it tells us what we're supposed to do. It says we must make sure that this interpretation, right, is preached throughout all the world. Right? Now somebody say, well, the Bible's been preached. Yes, Christianity has been preached. Mormonism is preached. Jehovah's Witnesses has been preached. Baptist has been preached. Methodist has been preached. AME has been preached. Episcopalian has been preached. Roman Catholic has been preached. Orthodox has been preached. Apostolic has been preached. Kojic has been preached. Free Will Baptist has been preached, right? Etc., etc. But it says this interpretation, only one. If once it is preached throughout the entirety of the earth, he said, now let's look for the end to come. You need to know that you have a responsibility to preach the proper word, to proclaim it in your life, proclaim it in your walk, to walk this thing, whether you be Aaron or Moses in the equation, represent. That's how much representation matters to Yah. He says, I'm not even going to bring, Yehoshua says, the end, eschatology that you're studying, he says, eschatology doesn't even, that you studying, can't even be fully performed until you preach the word. Not a word, the word. And that's why I said we got to be careful with this cognitive dissonance and being double-minded. Because we want to preach the word, but we still want to talk about, your sign. We want to preach the word, but we still want to mix it with what happens in Kemet. We want to preach the word, but then we want to say, well, actually, what was Israelite is not really Israelite. It's actually more, more Aramaic. Or it's actually not. Now we're saying it's more Bantu and more this. Look, there are Bantu persons who have mixed and matched with Israelites, but we were not Bantu. Oh no, Israel was over here in the United States of America. No, that's Mormonism. That's the same group of persons that say that the only reason that you're considered to be people of color is because you were cowards and you didn't fight for Christ and you didn't fight for the devil. That's not even true. But even Moors, so-called Moors in America, are trying to teach that. No, that's not true at all. And you're taking the same stuff. You're mixing and matching too much stuff. I get that there's things we can look at from other cultures and be like, okay, I can see where they get that from, and maybe it works to a certain degree, but that's not our culture. I know we like Naruto, but Naruto's got a nine-tail, seven-tail, or nine-tail? Nine-tail, right? Nine-tail demon inside him. He's not a great person. In our belief system, we don't want demons inside him. I know some of you were talking about you got to have just as much yin as yang, or just as much righteousness as evil. No. We want complete righteousness. How dare I be like, I'm following the Bible because I want to be balanced in the way that I want to be nice to my wife on Thursdays, but I'm going to be vicious to her on Fridays. No, we got to preach the unadulterated. That's what it says. If it's adulterated, by the way, what is adultery? It means we're cheating on our husband. Who is our husband? Our husband spiritually is the Most High Yah. So we don't want to cheat as the body, right? As the Qadishem, right? The assembly. We don't want to cheat on our husband. So we don't need to be preaching stuff we're not one with, because we're one with our husband, right? In the spirit. So if we are saying we're with Yah, but then it's, no offense to anybody, I'm just being honest, I'm just using different belief systems if you haven't caught on. We can't say that we believe in what our husband says, but then say we're pro whatever Buddha says. I didn't say we can't be pro some things, but if there are things that don't match, right, then we can't say that we're with it. We can't say we love our husband, Yah, in the spirit, but then say, hey, it's fakey this, it's fakey that. Well, it can't always match. Some things make sense, some things don't. We can't say that we're pro-truth, but then act like, well, then we're pro-Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is a bunch of made-up stuff that's just thrown together and sewn up the way that they do other stuff like Christmas. We don't need an African version of Christmas. We need an Israelite truth that's Yah's version of his word, because there's no version of it, it's only original. When we do that and make sure that is executed properly throughout the world, it says, now here comes the end. If you want this wicked system to end, you have a part to play. You have the power behind it because Yehoshua is coming back with all power in his hand. What's Putin? I don't know. What are you talking about? What's Putin? What, as far as his background, or as far as what he is his people? I mean, he's Russian, right? I don't know outside of that. I mean, he's a leader in the world or whatever. He's somebody who's anti-Christ too. Oh, Purim. Purim Pavadaim. Sorry, Purim. Pavadaim is something we're not commanded that has to be done, like the main 6 holy days. Like Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Pentecost, Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Feast of Tabernacles. We are not commanded that we have to do it, but it's a tradition that was started by Esther and Mordecai after they, and we did it this year, by the way, virtually. We added it in for the first time this year, officially recognizing it. Although we officially recognize it, but officially celebrating it together. But it's basically just a celebration coming together to celebrate what Esther did, and what happened when Yah, through Mordecai and Esther, were able to deliver us from affliction that would have taken us out in genocide. Um, um, the Feast of Dedication, or Hanukkah, is same deal. All of that's 8 days, but same kind of deal. We're not commanded that we have to do it, but it's something that we keep as far as tradition. Something that comes out of Maccabees, first Maccabees, and second Maccabees, the whole thing against the Greeks, right? But the main thing being how we took back the temple and we kicked the Greeks out and we defeated them. Yeah, but that's all that I have for today, though. We, you know, whether you be, if we're talking about Exodus, and getting out of the beast, and getting out of the world, you know, and coming into acknowledgement of who the Most High is, we have to make sure that we do what's righteous. You said your opinion on how to remember who one is without getting lost in the middle. I'm not sure what you mean by getting lost in the middle. You're saying who one is, and I don't want to give you an opinion. I don't want to opine. If I opine, that's me putting my flesh on something. We want to be obedient to the word. That's all I'm allowed to do here, because I'm a representative, right? I'm an ambassador, so I never speak of my own. If I do, I try to be very clear, like, hey, this is not a verse, or this is not blah blah. This is clearly what I think. But I don't want to opine for you, because we have an answer from that from on high. So why would I need to give you an opinion? Now, I don't know exactly what you mean by getting lost, and I got to really end. We're supposed to have been done about 15 minutes ago now, so I got to be finished. But that being said, if we're talking about how to not get lost in finding yourself or knowing who one is, and not going back and forth or getting lost to where you're kind of like hokey pokey, like, you know, one day you get your left foot in and your left foot out. I'll try to see if I can, Apostle, if I'm available to, or if you're available to reach out to me. You know, my information's there. You can text me, and if I'm able to, we'll see. But and how you doing, Kirsten? But basically, we have the word. We have the word itself. It's our governance. The Bible declares, even Christ declares, I believe, that if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged. So, when it talks about if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged, we have to get into this place to where we recognize and realize that the word itself is what we'll be judged by. So, for example, when we get to heaven, Revelation 20, verse 11 through 15 tells us that the works that follow us, according to Revelation 14, 13. Revelation 20, verse 11 through 15 tells us that the angels will be looking at the scrolls to see if we, and be looking at our works to see if our works match with what we believe. If our works match and our name is written in the book of life, we can enter into the kingdom of heaven, the New Jerusalem. If our works seem to go against what we say we believe in, then not so much, right? And that's basically, you know, what it is. We have this word to judge ourselves. Now we need to learn the original of it, the essence of it, the kingdom part of it, the parts that have been changed. We need to learn those things. Oh my greatness. Soho, I told you next time, right? If you can't even come and say hello or just like that, I just told you next time we're just gonna get rid of you, right? So you don't have to worry about being on anymore, right? All right. But yeah. So if we use the word that's there, right, then we don't have to really go much further than that. So once again, like I was saying earlier, we get lost because we're trying to get into all the stuff. We're trying to mix and match this and that. This is the belief in this for us. How you doing, Spicy? The belief in this for us is that this is perfect. It is tav. It is complete. It is without sin. According to our Messiah in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, verse 48, if we follow it to the character, right, then we can be perfect in heaven, or we can be perfect like our Father in heaven also is perfect. We have the ability to follow His word because His word is Him. So if we do what this says, we're doing what our Messiah says. If we're doing what this says, we're doing what Holy Spirit says. If we're doing what this says, we're doing what our Father who art in heaven says. So if we're doing what this says, this protects us, right? Law doesn't give rights, law protects rights. So we don't need to be given the right to free will. The law protects what we do in free will. That's His law. If we do something outside of the law according to our free will, then we're not unprotected. If we die in an unprotected place, we go to an unprotected place. Right? So I don't have to opine on that. We just follow what the word says. And that's why, once again, Psalm chapter 1, or Psalm, the first division of Psalm, but Psalm chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, say that our delight should be inside of His law. and therefore inside of his law doth we meditate day and night. And how you doing, Florence? All right, that's all that I have, beloved. Tadach, thank you. I appreciate y'all so very, very much. Yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. I believe tomorrow for our early rise of Bible study session. I believe that's Minister to Samantha Ray. And then after that, I believe that we're supposed to be followed by, or we'll be followed by the live session where we're continuing our Exodus series. And then we'll see you guys in the evening, which not sure which minister will be, or which one of us on staff will be preaching and teaching for the adults tomorrow, and or for the babies, but we should have our VBS starting tomorrow, 6 p.m. for the babies, 7 p.m. for the adults, 8 p.m. for everybody else. If you can, text me. If you try to DM me or something, I'll try to check the DMs. I keep telling persons I get a whole bunch of them. I can't really keep up with them. But if you text us at the information that we've given out, whether it be in the description of the video or whether it be in our link tree on TikTok, you can find that. But I thank you all. I appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and take a break and enjoy my time. It's family day, and I appreciate you. So once again, yeah, feel free to look up our information to be able to text us, contact us. Matter of fact, I can't do the shout out with the music per se, but I will put the information up on the screen, and you can literally look on the screen. If you want on YouTube, you can just look at the description with the video. But you guys can literally just look on the screen. I'm gonna put it up as soon as I close. You'll be able to see exactly how you can text us and get in contact with us. I'll even try to put up I forget what those things are called that you can take a picture of and scan or whatever those things are called. The QR code, right? I guess that's called what it's called. But I'll put that information up for us. So I thank you again. I appreciate you. Feel free to take a screenshot of what we're putting up, and we very much so appreciate you guys. We look forward to talking to you. And hopefully you'll enjoy. Hopefully you've been enjoying this series so far, and hopefully you'll enjoy everything that Yah has for us at VBS. So thank you again. We appreciate you. Tadach. Have a great day. Have an awesome day in Yah. Continue to do great things. Continue to trust in Him, and continue to prepare yourself for an exodus out of this wicked modern Misraim that we're in today. So that's all that I have. We give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma, to the ministerial staff, moderators, SOC, Lottie Dottie, everybody. We appreciate you so very, very much. You guys take care. Remember, as always, beloved, that you are loved. You're necessary. You're majestic. You're fearfully, wonderfully made. And you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. Take care. Don't forget, tomorrow at 6 p.m. New York time will be the beginning of our first day of the next month. And yeah, we appreciate you so very much. Have a great day. Have a great night. Enjoy yourselves. I'm going to enjoy mine. I'm going to enjoy my family. And until the next time, continue to do better, become better, and know that we're walking with Yahashua. Hopefully you're walking with us. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.